Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Well, that was quick. Hey, what's up, everybody? I forgot I turned off my scene transitions, so that was really sudden. So hold on a second. That was very unsatisfying. Wait 1 second.
RPG! 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 RPG!
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you back for another exciting journey into the world of tabletop role-playing games. The world, as we know it, may be collapsing and falling into utter ruin, but you know what? We're here to talk about imaginary games. So let us be a respite from a crazy and uncivil world. Welcome, everyone. Of course, we've had a little bit of a hiccup in our schedule lately. I've been doing a little bit of traveling. Went out on the sea, thanks to my buddy Larry for taking me out on a cruise. That was very nice of him. We had a good time remembering what it was like to be young, and then remembering that we are, in fact, not young anymore. As by the last day, we were definitely feeling it. Microphone is being kind of a pain in the butt. I was trying to clean it earlier. Welcome. Yes, I am in the process of. I just got my Depths of Perdition Kickstarter from miniwargaming.com. It's a flexible modular gaming table system that I'm hoping to be able to print up a bunch of. I kickstarted it mostly because I'm really excited about the StarCraft miniature game that's coming out, but I'm also hoping to maybe put some sort of cool big mega game together for NightCon Session 0, which is going to be happening in Origins 2026. What's up, G Helmet? Good to see you. Tundalus, what's up? Heyo. Scotty P, what's up, Scott? Good to see you. Gold Cat. So today's first look is brought to us by Gold Cat. As many of you know, Knights of Last Call Patreon members are awarded tickets, gold and silver, for their contributions to the community and to the success of this channel. One of the perks that you get for those tickets is the ability to add items to the first queue look. And if you are willing to spend those very precious, hard to find, hard to acquire golden tickets, you can even bump your first look choice to the front of the queue. And that is what Gold Cat did. So today's first look brought to us by Gold Cat, who is extremely excited for this. Cinnabos has a question for Tundalus. Gold Cat says, probably not going to be super interesting because it's pretty much just OSR. Well, you know what? We have been basically doing nothing but OSR recently. I feel like we get into these theme weeks recently where we end up doing a bunch of mechs, and then we did a bunch of, we did Dagger Week, and then we did Draw Steel, and then we did a bunch of mech games, and then we did a bunch of OSR games. So, yeah. Golda Cat wants me to make sure to include the scenario packs, and generally actually taking this to the table parts, it's super good. Well, we will try. We will try. As a reminder, we do have 2 goals. We have a super chat goal, of course, as we always do for our first looks, showing your support for first looks. Always appreciated. Helps pay for these PDFs. And of course, if you are interested in picking up any of our games that we talk about, this one included, we do have an affiliate link in the description below. That'll take you to Drive Through RPG, and we get a couple of percentage points back for our credit that we can use to buy more games. And then, of course, there's a tip goal. Tipping is the main way that, aside from joining the Patreon, that you could support this channel. And we always have some sort of fun little tip goal, or try to. Today is going to be a post-credits mega game stream. So if first looks aren't enough and you want me to keep talking, well, that's what the tip goal is for. What's up, River Ray, Stratosaurus? Good to see ya. Beowulf, what's going on? RPG, D&D, OSE, RPG, D&D, OSE. Wilderfeast debuts at NightCon confirmed. Well, Shuvix, I know Ryan is apparently bringing his collector's edition, which includes the apron. So there's that. What's up, Thomas? Good to see you. Sean says MCDM also announced their OSR game today. Crows on their Patreon today. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Beyond the Wall, but if we do a post-game retrospective, we can talk about Crows a little bit. I actually just canceled my MCDM Patreon today after being a member of his for like 5 years, which is funny because now they're like, oh, we're going to be showing stuff about Crows. And I was like, damn it. I might have to re-sign back up. So, without further ado, no gilding the lily, we're going to be getting into some more OSR. And today, we are going to be taking a look at nothing. Oh, there it is. Okay. Beyond the Wall and Other Adventures. So Beyond the Wall and Other Adventures, brought to us by Golda Cat. Now, I'm not going to lie, I barely have heard of this game. Golda Cat wanted it, and well, there we go. That's That's the way it works. They wouldn't be a first look if I knew them all. I don't know this game at all. Now, I do know that this game is part of the original surge of OSR games that came out sort of in the the early 2010s. So this game is over 10 years old. I don't know if it has had very many updates or additions. This suggests that this is very much not in the new SR. It's not Into the Odd or Knave or Cairn or Shadow Dark or any of those other games that are sort of pseudo new and maybe showcasing a lot of cool new tech. My guess is this is going to be very much BX coded in that way. So we'll take a look. And so even as we kind of get into it, one of the things, Tundalis is in chat, and everyone knows, of course, Tundalis is the designer and author of Trespasser. And one of the things that we talked about is how the production quality for a lot of games, even indie games, has really gone through the roof. And so it'll be interesting to see how this game holds up, given that it is 12, 13 years old, and looking at what the production expectations were, say 10 plus years ago, as opposed to what they are now. So we start here with a fairly, pretty average little cover art here with some strange creatures in the forests and some adventurers, maybe a mage, maybe a thief, some goblins or hobgoblins, some sort of evil creature. I don't mind it. It seems kind of low fantasy. I mean, there's a little magic going on here. River Ray says, I call the 2010s crop of ugly by my own current standards RPGs drive-through RPG core. We'll see here. So every home needs its heroes. This is like the intro. Your small village may seem like a haven to you and your friends, but it is not safe. Dangerous faeries lurk in the forest just outside of town. Wicked men and ferocious monsters are a constant threat, and sometimes dark forces find their way into your neighbor's hearts. You and your companions are young and untested, but ready to protect what matters. Come with us beyond the wall. So lots of time we want to play a role-playing game, but just don't have the time for all the prep work involved. No more. Beyond the Wall and Other Adventures is a kit to make a gang of childhood friends and send them off on their first big adventure, just like in the novels that we loved growing up. Now we have this simple fantasy role-playing game that gives a group of players all the tools they need to play an exciting adventure in a single evening, no homework, no fuss. Very interesting. So the premise here, number one, is that it is supposed to be a low prep, no prep game. And again, at that time and this place, that wasn't necessarily something that was, that's kind of new. That was sort of new tech back then. This was back when, OSR was all like, draw your dungeon, map out your whole campaign. But also the idea that sounds like it's maybe designed, I don't want to say designed for a one shot, but it's certainly designed for this idea of, think Wheel of Time, right? You have a group of childhood friends and circumstances happen and they go on that first big adventure. So we have inspired by the works of Ursula K. Le Guin, my favorite fantasy author of all time. Trevco, thank you. I don't know why we're not getting an alert for that, but thank you. Maybe it'll kick in. I don't know. SE alert. No, it should be working. I don't know why that's not there, but thank you, Trevco. Well, so that's a fantastic, fantastic source. Following up by it is actually the very first fantasy book I ever bought myself. Now, some of you may not know Susan Cooper, but you may be familiar with The Dark is Rising, which was written in the 70s, I think. It won the Newbery Award, and I remember buying The Dark is Rising, which is actually like the third or fourth book in the Dark is Rising cycle. But I remember buying that book at, I don't even want to know, my second, third grade Scholastic Book Fair. I remember buying it from Thomas Jefferson Elementary. I still have that copy of that book. So I've had it for all these years. And I love, it's obviously very, it's young adult, kid code, but I love it. So fantastic. It uses playbooks and scenario packs for play in a single evening with no prep. Okay. 6 character playbooks, including the Village Hero and the Witch's Prentice, and 2 scenario packs, Angered Fae and Hidden Cult. Interesting. All right. And we can see here this was made in 2012. 2014. The game looks like the core rules are about 30 pages, give or take. How to play is another 5 pages. Spells and magics takes up a whopping, 25 pages, including magical items. We get a bestiary, and then we get the playbooks and the scenario packs. And that's it. So pretty tight little package of a game here. Thank you, Beowulf, for resubscribing with Prime on a 9-month streak. I don't know why that's not causing, that's supposed to cause a little bit of a alert. I don't know why it's not. I'm going to test something here. Ignore this. All right. Well, that works. All right. Never mind. Must be something with Twitch.
Jacqueline tipped $14.
No, she didn't. That's a fake one. It's a fake out. All right. Core rules. I don't know. I don't mind the art. I think it looks pretty cool. I mean, for given what it is, All right. This is a simple set of rules similar to older versions of the world's most popular fantasy role-playing game. Thank you, Jake, for this resub on the Prime. Appreciate you. The game is designed to be fast and easy to learn to play. Flavor. Beyond the Wall can model most brands of fantasy stories, but is particularly suited for Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea novels, Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Peer-Dain. These are low fantasy stories about young heroes. Again, it's supposed to be played out of the box, which means playbooks and scenario packs. And it should absolutely be able to play with 0 prep in 3 to 5 hours. The game still works perfectly well for traditional play styles, but we made it as a vehicle for quick on-the-fly play. All right. So we have a class. There are warriors, there are rogues, and there are mages. Love it. I, of course, believe in the 3-class model. Thank you, Force, for the Prime sub. Thank you, Bakusar, for the 8-month Prime sub. Appreciate all of you for the resubbies. Those do make a difference, by the way. I really appreciate you guys. A couple $100 extra a month goes a long way. I know it's a couple clicks of a button, but if you do have the opportunity and time to do so, it does mean a lot for me. For the most part, only PCs have a class. Level. That's right, Aiden. The Holy Trinity. We got warriors. We've got warriors. We've got experts, and we've got spellcasters. And I agree with the Stratosaurus. I've said it many times on here. I prefer the white mage over the cleric. I think that the presence of the cleric, the presence of the divine spell list, hell, most of the spells in D&D that are associated with the divine spell list basically come from the Bible. They come from acts or miracles attributed to Jesus, Moses, Elijah, you name it. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem like, particularly a lot of the tenets of clerics are tied to, Christian myths and Christian theology. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem as fantastic to me as I think it could be. And of course, it came from a time and a place. And anyways, I much prefer white mages to clerics. Well, the main difference is that a cleric is, in a standard D&D thing, a cleric, it represents a sort of Templar knight from Christian mythos, right? A sort of a miracle worker who serves God and, goes out, crusading on behalf of their chosen deity, whereas a white mage is just an arcane spellcaster. We got level, we have ability scores. All right. It uses kind of the classic OS, the classic BX D&D. OSE didn't exist back then. So again, OSE just, people will attribute things to OSE, which is fine, but it's like OSE is just a carbon copy of BX D&D. So classic ability scores. Good. Reiterating a point here. Gridlock asking all the questions. Can a white mage heal? Yes, a white mage can heal. People always point out random ability scores back in the day, but I also point out that white ability scores didn't mean as much. Even if you somehow managed to roll a 15, it was still only a +1. So, and having a 9 was a 0, you know what I mean? So like a lot of that stuff just doesn't matter as much as it used to. But we have all the normal ones: strength, dex, con, right? Added to your hit points. Dex adds to your armor class and ranged weapon. Strength goes to melee. Intelligence is added to the number of languages that you get to play. Wisdom is added to your saving throws to resist magic. Charisma is added to the number of allies that may follow you. So basic old school D&D ability scores. We have the 3 cardinal alignments of law, chaos, and neutrality. Good and evil did not exist back then. Law was basically synonymous with good. But I should point out that law is not the same as good. The idea is that order was preferable to chaos. So the idea of chaotic good did not really exist. The idea of lawful evil did not really exist. And this is very much tied, by the way, to things like, Elric of Melniboné and the works of Moorcock and stuff like that. And so this idea of the primordial struggle, right, between order and chaos. Now, this game did come out, though, right, a couple years before 5th edition. And but it does use things like so 3rd edition had existed, 4th edition had existed. So we have a base attack bonus instead of a THAC0 or a combat to hit chart. Armor class goes up. Hit points are what we expect them to be. When you go to 0 hit points, you are out of the fight, unconscious or nearly so. It is at this point that we can call a character seriously wounded, perhaps with a grave sword wound or a nasty blow. But you are not dead yet. I'm not dead yet. But you are in serious trouble. Saving throws look like they use the classic old school saving throws of poison, breath weapon, polymorph, spell, and magic item. Which does sound cooler, I suppose, or than rod, staff, wand, but it is what it is. Ooh, we have a fortune point mechanic. Only players have fortune points. So we got kind of a meta currency here, a little plot armor. Basic stuff here. Okay, making a character. We're going to roll 46, drop low, repeat this 5 times, and assign your stats. So, basic 3rd edition style ability scores modifiers. A testament to how ignorant I am. What is the official ability score generation process for 5th edition D&D? I actually don't know. Is it point buy? I mean, obviously point buy has been around since basically the beginning of time, but what is the official process? Is it 46 drop low? It's point buy. Okay. Beowulf, no, you do this and then you repeat it 5 times. Gull says, note, this is only if you ignore the character playbooks, which you shouldn't. So in other words, you don't actually even have to make a character because it's supposed to be a standard, you're supposed to use a pre-made character to make this easy. So, but if you did make your character, you would pick one of the 3 classes, you would record your information down, you would pick 2 skills, which give you a +2 bonus when you make that a check. Languages, some basic equipment, and 46 silver to buy weapons and armor. You start with a rope, flint and tinder, a water flask, a whetstone, and some other basic stuff. Here's our class, very basic. The Warrior, D10 hit dice, +1 to initiative, can wear any armor. Pick 1 weapon at first level, you get +1 to hit, +2 to damage. And you begin the game with a weapon. Over the course of their career, you'll pick up several tricks. For D6 Gridlock Studios. For Dice 6. Over the course of their careers, you'll pick up several tricks. You get 1 knack at first level, then 3, 6, and 9. The game caps out at level 10. Knacks can be chosen more than once, and it's basically just boring bonuses to attacks and damage. So basically, the OSR equivalent of numbers go burr. Now, this is tough because weapon specialization is really good. It's +1 to hit, +2 to damage. But then if you get it in a different weapon, what are we doing? Now, of course, I hate weapon specialization, especially in old school D&D. I think what makes a fighter cool is they could pick up every weapon, any weapon, and they could be great. When you have a weapon specialization, it encourages you to only use that weapon until the end of time. That being said, it would be very hard to not just take defensive fighter a bunch. Not getting hit is a great way to not die in old school games. We can see here the classic progression whereby experience points doubles at every level of the game, except for inexplicably at 8th level where it goes to 120,000, not 128, but then it's still, and then you add 120,000 with each time. All right. We have the Rogue, which has a D8 and a +2 initiative bonus. They can use light armor, and they get more fortune points. They get 5 fortune points instead of 3. And they are highly skilled, receiving, and normally everyone gets 2 skills. They get 2 additional skills, along with an additional skill every odd number, 3, 5, 7, 9. And we can see their base attack bonus a little slower, and their experience, though, a lot cheaper. And lastly, the Mage with a piddly D6 hit points, although positively phenomenal hit points compared to old school D&D. Can't wear any armor, and you have magic with 2 cantrips, 2 spells, and a ritual. You can also sense magic. And of course, the highest, most expensive experience point chart. And the worst saving throws. Although your saving throws versus magic items, not too bad. And of course, the worst base attack bonus. Following with the common practice that it sucks to be a mage until about level 5. We've got coins. We've got basic weapons that do D4, D6, D8, D10 damage. And we have armor that gives +2, +4, +6, +8. You can also have a simple or reinforced shields. So basically the best armor you could have is full plate and shield, which give you +10 to your AC, making your armor class 20. Basic stuff here. We have some odds and ends, rope, light sources, all that jazz. And of course, the ever popular livestock and transports. We got a poll coming up in chat. Derek wants to know. How's everybody doing? All right. Graphical poll. All right. In your D&D career, have you ever non-ironically bought a cart, coach, or carriage? All right. Poll is up. In your D&D career, have you ever non-ironically bought a cart, coach, or carriage? Coming in. Ooh. Golden Cat says, hilariously, mostly in Dragonbane, right, where they are broken. Osiris with the correct answer. Yes, got to haul that treasure somehow. Keith says cart for life. Mr. Bubba Huff says you should look at the character playbooks for character creation. They have a better system based on answering life questions. Well, Mr. Bubba Huff, we're going to get there. The game's not that long. We got plenty of time. Unless, of course, people say this game sucks and everybody leaves the chat, and then in which case I'll end the stream early. All right. Hirelings and allies. Of course, it wouldn't be an old school game without having a retinue of followers. Pretty normal stuff here. Allies are different than hirelings. These are our retainers that we can get. A knight squire is probably an ally, but their men-at-arms are hirelings. When traveling with a PC, allies will expect funds to support them, and they will require a share of treasure. Their loyalty is not just bought, it is earned. This was a big, this was a big part of old school play, which again, I think for the most part, not only is not done anymore, but I think even in old school tables, when I go around conventions and stuff like that, and I see people playing old school tables, nobody has retainers, henchmen, allies anymore, by and large. I think the idea of the troop style play is very unpopular. And for no other reason, then it is also worth noting that allies can make an excellent replacement PC should characters meet an unfortunate end, and a blow dealt by losing a character may be lessened if there's a beloved ally waiting in the wings with their own story to tell. It was certainly the case that it was very nice to be able to have sort of a backup character locked and loaded and ready to go. All right. All right. Ability score checks. Roll a d20 and compare the result to your score. If the number on the die is equal to your score or lower, you have exceeded. This is the original roll low mechanic, roll under mechanic. That's right. Even back in the original D&D days, there was a roll low mechanic. You rolled a d20, unmodified, and if it was less than or equal to your statistic, your stat, you did it. So the GM might say, make a strength check. And that meant roll a d20. And if you roll equal to or under than your strength, you did it. And if you didn't do it, well, then if you rolled above, you didn't do it. So that was the original meaning of fact. In fact, if we were to talk about AD&D second edition, the way that non-weapon proficiencies worked is they basically were based off of your stat itself of strength or dex or whatever, and then modified it in that way. So anyways, ability score checks were the original, checks. So everyone's like, oh, the roll low mechanics and Dragonbane and stuff like that. But roll under was part of D&D from the beginning of the game. And yes, the game did not have skills, but that didn't mean that it didn't have ability or attribute checks. It did. It had roll under. I'm a fan of this. It's quick. It's easy. You know what you need to roll. Now, of course, this creates the classic problem, which people will get into, which is that, and which, third edition, which got rid of this system, by the way, third edition D&D, which is the idea that the GM might ask you, the warrior, I described that the wood is swollen from the humid, moist air of the cave underneath the waterfall, and the warrior says, I'm going to kick the door in. And I said, great, make a strength check. And they roll a 16 or a 17 and they fail. And then the wizard goes in, who has a strength of like 8, and just rolls, or 6, and rolls a 2 or rolls a 3, and boom, they kick in the door. And of course, there's some people who have a real big problem with that. And so the way that they kind of quote unquote fix that is by, making the DC 22 or 23, and now the wizard can't possibly succeed, right? So that was the problem, right? It's a DC-less situation. Anyways, however, you can modify the stat. Now, of course, Dragonbane just uses banes and boons, which are basically advantage and disadvantage. But the way that they did it back then was like a penalty or a bonus to your virtual ability score, which admittedly is not the most intuitive thing in the world, but it is what it is. And of course, if you're skilled, then you can also get a bonus to your check as well. Blah, 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 basic stuff here, helping and all this other jazz. We've got rules for searching. If a character is actively searching for something, the player should make an intelligence check. On the other hand, if the game master wants to see if the character passively notices something, they should now call for a wisdom check. Basic stuff here. Charisma and reactions. We've got reaction rolls here. Now, Travis is coming in here with some Powered by the Apocalypse nonsense. Obviously, I love Powered by the Apocalypse back. But null results were the name of the game back then, my friend. All right, fortune. Characters have 3 fortune points. Rogues have 5. You can spend them in the following way. Help a friend. Spend a fortune point and lend a helping hand, giving them a +2 bonus to their score for a single roll. You may spend a fortune point to re-roll any failed roll, such as an ability check, a saving throw, or a to-hit roll, and you can cheat death. Once a character reaches 0 hit points, they are considered dying and loses 1 additional hit points until reaching death. They can spend a fortune point to stabilize and not continue taking damage. Characters who are do so are safe from death for 24 hours, after which they will continue to lose hit points again if they have not received medical attention. So it doesn't look like you get more of these. So I guess if you spend them for a second chance, you're really making a statement there. All right, combat looks to be pretty normal. Initiative order, you go around in circles, big deal. Hit points, you recover 1 hit point per night. Very basic OSR. If you get full bed rest, attended, well covered, you get 2 hit points. Oh, they're just going to drop true names on us. For those of you who have not read Earthsea Cycle, number 1, what is wrong with you? And number 2, true names are very important to the magic of Earthsea. Many creatures, such as spirits, demons, and dwarves, have common names, which they will give out freely, and true names, which they keep secret. Humans and many other creatures do not have true names, but it is possible for them to gain a naming ceremony and gain a common nickname, just like in Earthsea. A creature's true name can be used against it. Knowing someone's true name gives a character great power against him. By calling out their name, a character gets +5 bonus to all actions taken against the creature, including attacking it. Uttering the name also gives you a +5 bonus to saving throws against that bearer's powers and spells. But sharing your true name can have a benefit. If a character calls out a friend's true name while using the helping rules, they get a +1 additional bonus. Additionally, if you know their true name and you magically heal them, you get an additional hit point of healing. A very tip of the hat to Ursula K. Le Guin. Keith wants to know how I like Teanu. Yes, I like them all. My favorite, usually you would just say Wizard of Earthsea is my favorite, but my actual favorite is Tombs of Atuan. That actually is my favorite. But Jake says, Derek Sparrowhawk Melinda. Cheers. True Namer, goated 3.5 class for badness and sucking. There was a class in very late 3.5 called the True Namer. Well, Beowulf, past a certain point, everything is probably tied to Christian mythicism, so yeah. But cleric sucks. So. Well, number 1, clerics suck, and number 2, I find religion in fantasy games to be exceptionally uninteresting and very boring. There's a whole section here about true names, learning true names, whole jazz about true names. You gain experience by facing and overcoming challenges over the course of an adventure. The most obvious way is to defeat enemies in combat. Is that the most obvious? But characters often improve the most by accomplishing goals and completing adventures. So kind of a more traditional style there. Well, not traditional as in like old school, but like more modern take on it. Every monster in the bestiary has an experience value, which you get if you overcome, not necessarily kill, but overcome. You also gain experience points by finishing stories and accomplishing goals. Solving a mystery, saving a village from a marauding monster should all give the participating characters 500 XP. Accomplishing great tasks could be worth 1,000, and saving an entire kingdom could be worth 2,000 experience points or more. Now, I want to highlight that if you're like a level 5 fighter, okay, if you're a level 5 fighter or warrior, you need 16,000 experience points to get to the next level. So that would mean that if your character saved the kingdom 8 times, you would gain enough experience points to go from level 5 to level 6. Yikes. You also get 50 to 100 experience points at a time for a clever idea. Over the course of a longer campaign, you may find it appropriate to award other advantages. Why not? For instance, we often like to allow everyone to gain +1 to 2 different ability scores every 5 levels or so, or occasionally just to award a character a new skill when it makes sense for her to have learned something new and exciting. Now, this is kind of a tangent here, but there's something okay, number one, let me be very clear about something. I love diegetic advancement. I do. I use it all the time, and I've used it all the time in my D&D games. But I have to admit, it does feel weird to have diegetic advancement and sort of like, oh, you just gained a skill because in the fiction you learned a new skill. It feels weird to have that and to also have experience points and level up, right? Like, I gained a skill because I went up into the mountains and I trained with the wild tribesmen and women that live there, and the queen of the mountain people took me under her wings, and after I lived with them for a season, and so now I know the ways of mountain survival, and I just gained that skill. Cool. So that's really cool. But then I also gained enough experience points from fighting goblins, and I picked up, I don't know, arcane knowledge. It always feels very weird to me to have both. And I say this as someone who frequently does this, especially back in 3rd edition and 5th edition, the number of times I've played it, where I would just be like, yeah, sure, gain that. And then when someone gained a level, you get something too. It feels a bit like having your cake and eating it too. So in other words, it just feels broken, I guess. But anyways, I've always found it to be a little bit strange to have these 2 completely independent processes of leveling up. And it sort of seems to kind of defeat the purpose. All right. We're almost done with the core rules, by the way. So cool stuff. We may be on track for like the shortest stream of all time. Again, we're going to look at some of the playbooks, of course. But yeah. So we have sorceress arts. Now remember, there's no cleric here. So we have a mage. We have cantrips, spells, and rituals. Right, exactly, Simon. Having XP is an abstraction of gaining skills. And so if you also have diegetic skill improvement, you're just double dipping. So I completely agree with you. And again, I do it all the time because I think at a certain level I prefer diegetic advancement, but I also understand that it's, I don't know, there's an element of role-playing games, right? Which is, play in the system and level up your character, and telling somebody the entire game is diegetic, and you're like, well, what do I get? What do you, there's no progress, there's no progression system at all. You only get stuff when you do get stuff, Anyways, we've got spell ranges, all the normal stuff that you would expect. Cantrips are the weakest magic. They are cast on the fly. Ooh, you have to make an intelligence or wisdom test. No, this was written after 3rd edition. So 3rd edition came out in 2000. This came out in 2012, 2013. So this was actually after 4th edition even still. This was right before 5th edition, or probably actually 5th edition was probably in beta testing when this was coming out. If you succeed at your intelligence or wisdom test, you cast your cantrip. And when you fail, either you find yourself robbed of your magical energies until you can rest, or the magic spins out of your control. If you choose to run out of magical energy, then the mage has exhausted themselves and are unable to use magic of any sort until they have had a full night's sleep. Additionally, any spells or rituals which the mage had cast earlier and which are still in effect immediately end, except for permanent magic. However, if you choose to have your cantrip be miscast, then the magic has gone horribly wrong. This is dangerous because now the GM may decide what happens with the magic. In all instances, the spell should have a deleterious effect on the spells or characters or friends. In general, cantrips are only minor effects. They cannot damage targets. They only work nearby and do not produce anything permanent. Now, I also have a little bit of a bone to pick. Very much a GM hard move. I do have a little bit of a bone to pick, which is that, from a gamist perspective, mages are made weak because magic was very powerful. And a lot of OSR games, I have noticed, even going back as far as this game, introduce something like make a spell casting check. And if so now there's a check, virtually equivalent to you have to roll to hit 2. But if you fail, there's a problem, or something blows up, or you lose access to all of your magic and all that stuff. And people think it's really cool to have these miscast tables, and you could turn into a demon, or a demon rips out of your soul, or if it's Dungeon Crawl Classic, something, I don't know, stupid happens, which is fine. But then why are the mages still super weak? Why are they still low hit points, low base attack bonus, low no armor, bad saves, right? The reason why they had high XP to level requirements, the reason they had all those really brutal requirements was because magic was really powerful and it just worked. And, that was the trade-off, is that you were, So anyways, it's interesting how that works. But we also have spells. So I guess there's a list of spells, but here's an example of a spell. False Friend, aka the friend spell, or charm spell, I should say. If the target of the spell fails their saving throw, they believe the caster is a trusted ally and bosom buddy. While he will not commit suicide, they will go to great lengths to please him, acting in all ways as a trusted ally. If they are being threatened by the mage or the mage's allies, they get a +5 bonus to their saving throw. If cast in combat, the spell simply will not work at all. Duration, 1 day per level. Rituals are the most powerful form of magic. Okay. Each ritual has a level associated with it, and a mage must be that level or higher in order to cast it. Casting a ritual requires a number of hours equal to the level of the ritual, as well as special ingredients. Keith, originally Charm Person had a duration that could be weeks at level 1. Especially if the creature was low intelligence. So we have a ritual here. It takes hours. If they spend the time, they must make an intelligence or wisdom test. If it's successful, the ritual goes off. If it fails, the ritual still occurs, but with some sort of twist. I definitely see some dungeon world elements here. Learning new rituals is time consuming, blah, 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 blah. You can attempt a ritual if you do not have the book, but it is dangerous and you get a -10 penalty to your check And remember, the ritual still happens if this test fails, but will be accompanied by unintended consequences. This means that the mage is still incredibly likely to make something happen, but very unlikely to control that something. That's very cool. For those of you who didn't watch Torchbearer, the Theurge is kind of a divine class, but they actually start the game with access to every single spell in the game, including like the high-level spells. They can cast the high-level spells. They are very unlikely to succeed, which means that they will probably suffer some sort of massive penalty, and they could potentially, make their eyes blow and up, and, their ears explode, and stigmata, and their heart cave in their chest. But they will have succeeded at casting the spell before they go out like a moth to the flame. And that's really cool to have that kind of ability. So that's really neat. I like this idea that rituals work. It's just a question of, are there unintended consequences or not? And as if to another tip of the hat to a Wizard of Earthsea, one could argue that this is one of the first major magics, right, that Ged casts, which is that he protects his village on the Isle of Gaunt when the Kargish raiders come, and he swarms the village in mists. All right. That's it. Those are the core rules. We get to the optional rules. We can have simplified saving throws. If you just want it to be 3rd edition, you can use Fortitude, Reflex, and Will saving throws, just like we're normally used to. We can have creatures like dwarves. We can have additional things other than humans. So we have races like dwarves, halflings, and elves. We could have multi-class characters. Basically, if you want, you could turn this game into 3rd edition. That's what I'm reading here. And then if you want to go more old school, here is the Elven. Elf is a race and elf is a class. Where just like in the old school games, they're very broken. They can wear armor. They're really good with weapons, but they also cast spells. They also have really good eyesight. They also get bonuses to all their actions and all this other stuff. I do like that they only have 2 fortune points. This reminds me of Warhammer, the way that Warhammer handles like some of the elder races like dwarves and elves. They make them much less. They don't have the same kind of grit and tenacity that, the humans have. I always like that. All right. Well, that's it. That's the whole game. That's the core rules. All right. So again, we are going to take a look at the character playbooks and scenario packs, but we're going to take a look at the how to play. We'll take a look at some of the spells and magics, but I mean, for most of the part, for most of the way, this is, it's D&D, so burning hands, turn undead, insect swarm, charm person, command, entangle. Darkness, 15-foot radius, featherfall, literally just featherfall. Color spray, all the normal. Bear's endurance. All right. How to play, which contains rules for using playbooks and scenario packs. We love a good long-running campaign as much as anybody. So basically, this entire system is OSR the one-shot. So Derek, by definition, almost hates this. But we love a good long-running campaign as much as anyone. But we have often found, as we've gotten older, amen, that it is often hard to schedule a frequent and consistent meeting time, and many people do not seem to have the free time to prepare between sessions. Moreover, we strongly believe that it is beneficial for there to be a way to pick up a fantasy role-playing game for the first time and play it more or less right away, straight out of the box. All right. Getting ready to play. The first thing the group should do is grab some dice and pencils. What do the players do? Childhood. The first 3 tables in each playbook deal with a character's time as a small child. The characters should take turns rolling on the tables one at a time. Their characters were all friends, and this is their first chance to figure out how they might have known each other growing up. The important thing is to slow down and elaborate on your results. It's just no fun just rolling dice one after the other and taking notes. So collaborate. That's one of my favorite things. It's like where people be like, let's get together. This used to happen all the time in like 3rd edition. We'd like, let's get together to make characters. And everybody would like roll their ability scores one at a time to kind of like hope that they rolled well and maybe glower at people who are rolling better. And then sit there in quietness and then make their characters for the next 2 to 4 hours and not say a damn word to anybody. The next tables let you know how you became a warrior, rogue, or mage. The third table involves the character to the player sitting to your right. And the last table is different. It's a special item that you start the thing with. Now, Grant, I love collaborative world building. I'm a big fan of Galileo games, now out of print. Backstory cards, I like that process. I like it even more when you have a sort of traveler-esque life path system and it literally decides what class and skills and abilities you might have. I really like that. I think that's more interesting than deciding what kind of character I want to play. Most of the time. So yeah. All right. What does the GM do? You know, you make some notes, you guide the players, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then by now, the players should have all had their characters and history together, and the game master should have an idea from her scenario pack on what's been going around near the village. Each scenario has a table called Recent Events. Each player will then roll the die to see what happened to their character sometime within the last couple of weeks. The character belonging to the player on their left was there for them for this event and has a chance to help out. This means that every character will have been involved in 2 events, and they should be weird and intriguing enough to get their characters going on their own. Each event also gives the chance an option of making a roll. This is a good chance for the players to test out the rules and learn how to make tests. And then we take a breather and grab a drink, and then we start playing. All right, so let's take a look here at the character playbooks. All right, so the options are the self-taught mage. You were a bright child. You loved stories of ancient wizards and sorceresses, but there was no one around to teach you, so you had to figure out. When you came of age, you found an ancient tomb and did it yourself. Your intelligence is at 12, and all of your other ability scores start at 8. You then roll a d12. Let's see what we got here. All right, let's see what options we have. We'll make a character. So our options are. All right. We have the self-taught mage. Cool. We have the untested thief. Ooh. Okay. We have the village hero. Yay, Parn! This is straight out of Record of Lodoss War. We have the witch's prentice. I've never actually seen that word before, prentice, but I like it. We have the would-be knight. Okay, never mind. I guess that's Parn. And we have the young woodsman. Woods person. And we have the angered fae. This is like a bonus one. Okay. So. All right, chat. What kid are we? We'll roll up on these tables. Ooh, we have one vote for the untested thief. I'll let you guys do that. Oh, Angered Fae is a scenario pack. Well, then why is it in the middle of the thing? Do not vote for 7. Oh, the Angered Fae scenario pack. Okay, never mind. There's only 6. Do not know what's going on with this piece of artwork, but yeah. I mean, this is simple enough, I guess. Someone asked earlier why I don't like one shots. For a variety of reasons, but one of them is that I think one shots are actually kind of fun if you're very familiar with the system and you're playing it just to, I don't know, pass some time and, you know, almost treat it like a drinking game. I don't think it's a great way to learn how to play a game. I think most games, maybe not a game that's as simple as this one, but I think that most games are revealed through multiple iterations. And you get to experience playing the game over multiple times. And I think playing one-shots a lot of times can give people the wrong impression or a false impression of a game. And I don't think that it does the game a good justice. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess it's a way to, you know, I just know a lot of people who play a bunch of one-shots and then they come away with this feeling of like, oh, I played all those games. And I kind of argue that you didn't. I don't think playing a one-shot counts as playing the game. All right. Well, the one that I told nobody to vote for is tied for first place. So if we throw that one out, it looks like we are going to be The Witch's Apprentice. Also, one shots. I find a lot of times the GM is running them for the first time, so the GM doesn't know what they're doing either, and it could create a very bad experience for players at the table. It could turn them off to what are otherwise, I think, great games. I've seen a lot of people get turned off because they played in a Powered by the Apocalypse one-shot at, say, like a convention, and quite frankly, the GM didn't know what they were doing, or it was a bad GM, and they played in this one-shot, and so there's that. The third thing is the way that people play in one-shots is very different. One-shots tend to be very focused, railroady, but also players tend to play in one-shots in ways that they don't play normally. And so they might be overly suicidal, or they might just, they do stuff that's problematic. Now, there are games out there that are designed for one-shots, like Dread. And Dread recognizes this. In fact, you could argue that one of the mechanics of Dread is based around suiciding your character. For those of you who don't know, in Dread, it plays on a Jenga tower, and when the GM asks you to pull instead of making a check, you have to pull a block from the tower. If you succeed at pulling the block from the tower, you succeed at the action. If you fail and the Jenga tower falls, your character dies and you fail. However, there is an option. There is one other mechanic in Dread, which is you can deliberately knock over the tower, in which case your character succeeds and dies. So basically, it's kind of, literally, sacrificing yourself, going out, throwing yourself into the werewolf, knocking him over the cliff to give the party time to, or the other people time to run away or whatever. And that is literally built into the game mechanic. And the reason it is because it's a one shot. I don't think people shouldn't be so cavalier at, throwing their characters into the wood chipper. But in a game of Dread, I think throwing your character into the wood chipper is a great idea. Maybe, especially at a convention, by the way, where, if you really don't give a shit, you could just get up and leave, go do something else. Hey, what's up, G Helmet? Thank you for the super chat. Canadians almost up to par with American. Because we love first looks, nothing more. I am also happy I found an eBay seller to send me the Fabula Ultima core book, which is currently sold out in Canada. Well, that's pretty awesome. We're playing Fabula Ultima tomorrow. So looking forward to that. I think it'll be our 5th session of Fabula Ultima. Very cool. All right. Well, we are going to be the Witch's Prentice. Oh, that's the village hero. All right. So we start with intelligence. All right. Every great mage was a student once. Some say the true heart of magic is the simple, practical work of the village witch. Your village, like many, had its own crone who tended the sick and blessed the fields. She chose you as her apprentice. You are naturally intelligent and thoughtful. Your wisdom and intelligence begin at 10, and everything else is 8. What was our childhood like? Well, we start with a D12, so that's good. I got a 6. You led the sheep out onto the mountain like my father before me. And I'm already bitching. I'm like, look at him. I'm getting con and dex and strength. Man, I wanted to have my father keeping stories. Man, my character sucks. I got con. I don't want con. Anyways, I get con, dex, strength, and wisdom. How did you distinguish yourself as a child? D8. A 3. I was the toughest kid around. More constitution. What kind of a witch am I? The other player characters were your best friends. Who else in the village befriended you while you were growing up? 2. The fishermen took a liking to you and you swapped stories with them. +2 dex, +2 wisdom. Now I wanted to go camping with the hunters because, I thought it'd been funny for my character to have an insane constitution. The witch chose you to be her apprentice and you began your training. You become a level 1 mage. You gain the class abilities Sense Magic and Spellcasting, the skill Herbalism, and the cantrip Hexing. The tables below will tell you what other spells. What else happened to you when you were her apprentice? Is that like a question for me? Just randomly in the middle of there? I don't understand. Is this question asking is this, or is this question tied to this? Anyways, I'll roll a d6. A little bit confused here by the thing of this. 5. The witch first chose me was my craftsmanship. +3 to dex. It'd be awesome to be like a witch with an 18 con. But I failed it. All right, so my character has managed to distribute my ability scores in the worst possible way. This is great. With what did the witch have her powers? All right, come on, baby. D6. With beasts, she taught the following magic. There we go, +2 to wisdom. All right. We know Call the Swarm. We know the ritual Bind Familiar and the cantrip Beastken. So we have one spell, and it's Insect Swarm. The witch was hard on you. How did you finally prove yourself to her? The player to your right was there with you. Ooh, all right. Golda Cat is the player to my right. All right, buddy. What did we get into? All right. We got 5. You always paid close attention when the witch went into the woods, and you learned all of the hidden paths and mystical places there. I get +2 intelligence and the entangle spell. Sick. However, Golda Cat has also traveled these paths with me and has gained +1 intelligence. Now that's cool. I mean, this is obviously pretty basic. We've seen stuff like this before, but I like that you're giving stat bonuses to the players next to you because of the shared thing that you go on. So that's kind of cool. Like I get the +2 int, but then, the player to my right gets +1 int. And then presumably I will also have gained a benefit from the player to my left, right? So for example, maybe the player to my left is the woodsman, or no, the would-be knight. And so how did they first draw blood? You accidentally slew a partner in training, The friend to your right, that would be me, stayed your hand when you almost made the same mistake again. Get +1 strength. Great, thank you. I think you could have an 18 Edenism if you rolled crazily accurately. Like if you rolled the exact right numbers. Oh yeah, Simon. I mean, I absolutely love connections like these. I think this is, by the way, not only is this cool because it's communal, it's collaborative, right? So it's not just, write your background in an isolation. It's, where are we at? Sorry, I lost the witch. Unfortunately, there is no bookmarks for the witch. There we go. So not only are these really cool because they tie the party together, but they're meaningful. They give you a mechanical benefit. It's not just something that you just write down just because. Where is the witch now? 3. Recently, a dark spirit came to claim you. She banished it, and she died banishing it and protecting you. +2 con and the witch's charged staff. All right, that's pretty sick. Because I think our witch has like an 18 con now. That's pretty cool. Respect. Also very kind of shades of like Ogion as well. That's it. So fill out our stats, our skills, our BAB, our alignment. So much con, so much dex. Yeah, my character's gonna have. It's like, oh wow, your character's gonna have so many hit points. No, I think with my con, I think I get like +2 hit points. That's it. It's not old school. It's not like D&D, Anyways, but yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, this is simple. It's fun. I have my own personal thought process here. Not to shit on role-playing games, but I'm gonna level with you. I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of times, if I was sitting down with a group of people, especially people I was fairly familiar with, to roll on these tables and build these kind of little stories about our characters, and then have those connection moments and share them with the players to the right and with our players to the left and sort of tie all that together, there's a very good chance that will have been more fun and more satisfying than the actual playing of the session. It's not 100%, but oftentimes I find that it oftentimes is in some ways. All right, well, there's our witch. Seems pretty simple. We have, we're definitely not a character that you would ever build, right? You would just put 18 into wisdom and go on your way, just like every other cleric in Pathfinder 2 or whatever, they all have the same stats, right? From here until the end of time. All right, and we know 2 spells. So let's take a look at the faction or the scenario pack. So the Angered Fae was the one I mistakenly thought. Someone or something, and I don't know if spoilers alert for this 12-year-old game, someone or something has greatly angered the fairy court in the forest near the village. Now the Fae are sowing discord among your friends and family, and the village life has begun to turn on its head. You and your friends must find a way to appease or coerce the Fae to sort out this mess. This will allow the GM to quickly create an adventure while the players are busy making their character. If you need to come up with the names of people or places, use these following tables. They are primarily Celtically inspired. All right. The name of our village is Pembroke. Pembroke. Ooh, okay. We have little icons here. This little icon means add a location to the map, and this little icon means add an NPC to the map. Now, we saw this back with our character when we were making the mage, the wizard, the witch. Right? Like, we saw, like, where's the witch now? So, like I think we would mark where the witch died or something like that. Maybe that's what that symbol means. Yeah. Interesting. So, for example, you know, the fishermen took a liking to us and we swapped stories with them. Means we have to add a fisherman to the map. So there's an idea of like a communal map building element to this game as well, which is really cool. Neat. I like that. I love A Quiet Year. It's one of my favorite con games to play. For those of you who don't know, Quiet Year is a game where you sit around with, you know, your friends and you draw a map together. So yeah, you add a location to the map when this is the item, and you add an NPC to the map when you roll this. This is neat. And here's some random table names. The cause of the fairies' anger. As the characters roll on their first 3 tables for their childhood backgrounds, fill in the following table with some interesting people. One of them is responsible, though they may not know it. Oh, okay, so as the players are rolling on their table and generating the important NPCs in their life, right? So, for example, maybe the cause of the fairies' anger was something that, you know, the witch who I was apprenticed to did, right? Because we generated that NPC. Or maybe it was the fisherman. Yes, the fisherman betrayed us. It's totally the fisherman. This is neat. I like this. This is charming. This is charming. So, you know what? We're totally going to go with the fishermen, okay? The fishermen are the ones who pissed off the fae. How did the fishermen piss off the fae? 3. They accidentally offended a hooded stranger passing on the road. Okay. Apparently, so the way I would probably interpret this is that maybe there was like a fae and they were like, you know, hungry or something like that. And the fishermen refused to share their meal with the fae. And it like offended them in this classic, like, you know, some weird fae sense of like, you know, the rules of hospitality, you know, had been broken in somehow or something like that. Like maybe it was like the summer solstice, right? And you were supposed to extend hospitality to all travelers on, you know, or something like that, you know, like the rule of the road, right? Whenever you're on the road, you must offer hospitality to those who travel the road. And they didn't do that, right? So who is the local lord of the fae? A deadly hunter who rides out on the wild hunt and is hoping that someone else will rule his kingdom for a year in his stead. Okay. What is this fairy lord's secret weakness? 5. Due to a magical prohibition, the lord cannot act directly against humans, whether with magic or with force. What is a strange rule of etiquette or whimsy that is enforced in this court? 4. The fae have a taboo subject whose mention gives the offender -5 to all charisma tests with fae for the rest of the adventure. This taboo is something that the humans consider common, like sneezing, logging, money, or eating meat. Or it is it. It's the word it. Near the beginning of the session, while the characters are still trying to piece together, well, yeah, eating fish. Enrique, that's great. Oh. Yeah, okay. That's true. But don't mention one-shots during the one-shot. Yeah. Maybe the fishermen did offer the Fey Lord fish, and that is their taboo subject. They're okay. They're a little weird, but they're okay. I'm trying to I'm trying to sort of get used to them. It'll be with Simon. I mean, I'm going to be playing a solo game, right? I'm going to be running Moria through the One Ring using their solo rules. So I'm going to be doing that here on Twitch and or YouTube. So that'll be kind of an interesting experience for me. I've played a couple GM-less games. Mostly they were like con one-shot games, things like Microscope or Fiasco or A Quiet Year, but they're not like long-term games. Right, exactly. I offered him fish. What problems are the neighbors having? A random character's parents are having marital difficulties and the relationship is dissolving due to financial problems. Both sides come separately for help. So remember, the Fey Lord can't deliberately attack people. So, you know, he's like, I don't know. He's out there banging everybody's parents. I'm not sure quite what's happening here, but that's all right. Just as the characters are getting a handle on all the problems of the village, a message arrives from the Fairy Lord, who is willing to negotiate with the villagers. Introduce this message about an hour into play, or earlier if the characters are at a loss as to what to do about the fairy problem. He comes. A small band of fairy warriors seize a villager's home by force and refuse to leave it until someone accompanies them back to the Fey Lord. It doesn't really make sense because, you know, we can't act against people deliberately, but that's fine. There are many means by which the players might end the fairy madness. They could leverage the Fey Lord's secret weakness, negotiate with the various groups of fairies in the woods, or even attempt to stop them by force, though this last method would be foolhardy. If the characters have a successful meeting with the Lord, they will be offered a quest to appease their fair folk. D8. A member of the Fey Court has gone missing, and the characters must rescue it. But the characters find themselves lost in a fairy maze and will be lost for some time without making wisdom tests. The quest site is guarded by 3 hags and insist on having the characters for dinner. And the final, what stands in the way of the culmination of their quest? A Fae, far too powerful for the characters to defeat, prevents them from completing their quest. Like most fairies, it is willing to make a deal or engage in a game or other contest. So now I'm having this vision, right? Where, like, okay, the Fey Lord is this hunter, but he represents like the spirit of summer, and he like wants to take a break or something like that. Like he hates, but is also bound into this thing with like the spirit of winter somehow. And so like there's this like kind of like, you know, like he wants someone else to take his place, and the players end up like going and meeting with like the spirit of winter, and they have to like complete the cycle or something like that in order to like make everything right again. That's kind of where my head is at. Like sort of like a king of winter and a king of summer, or like a king of winter, a king of summer and a queen of winter is kind of where I have this idea of. And maybe, no. Okay, I got it. Like the king of summer and the queen of winter, they love each other and they want to be together, but they can't because while one is awake, the other sleeps. I'm channeling my inner Lady Hawk here. And so there's only 2 days a year that they can be together, which is on the solstice. And so they want someone from the village to take their place so that they can be together and like, you know, finally like love each other the way that they're supposed to do. So it's kind of like weird and creepy and horrible, but it's like, it's because they love each other and they want to be together or something like that. And then we'll see how the players respond to that. Yeah, something. So yeah, very, very, very strong Lady Hawk. I was channeling my inner Lady Hawk there. And again, I've said this before, and I'll say this again. I don't create anything new. All I do is ruthlessly steal off of the stuff I grew up with in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and I just, you know, repurpose it for D&D. That's all I do. Whenever I make, or books I read, you know, as well. 98% of stuff I put into my game is basically something from like Robert Jordan or Tolkien or Ursula K. Le Guin. Anyways. Oh, you're channeling the recent Tinkerbell movie with the winter and summer monarchs in love. Sick. Oh, awesome. I missed that one, admittedly. The road goes on. If you are playing the scenario as a one-shot, saving the village from the Fae will probably be satisfying enough for the players. However, if you plan to continue with these characters on further adventures, it might be nice to give them a reward to help them with their further endeavors. The following tables will give you some ideas for such wars, as well as the seeds to plant for future adventures. Oh, yeah. Matthew Broderick was in it. Michelle Pfeiffer was in it. Rutger Hauer was in it. I don't remember who played the priest, but all right. What do we gain from this adventure? Should we have managed to, overcome something? All right. In the fairy forest, there are 3 large moonstones, each shining with its own light. The characters find these stones. Legend tells us that each is extremely valuable to a different group of fairies living somewhere throughout the land. All right. Cool. What leads the characters to their next adventure? One of the fairies is so impressed with the characters that she offers to lead them to a distant home of another fae court where her relations have great need of help. Now, the previous tables all help. So these are all things that the GM rolled before while the players are getting stuff ready. At the start of play, each player should roll on the recent events table to see what has happened. The player to the left was there too and can help by using a skill or spending a fortune point. So this is stuff that has happened lately. So, for example, maybe for Derek, while drinking at the inn, patterns and strange fractal patterns emerged in the beer. Test intelligence. Success. You read the patterns and learn who in the village who has angered the fae. Oh, okay. So yeah. So here's how I would interpret that, right? Instead of what I'm writing here. So again, remember, the GM has already rolled this. So Derek, if I was running this game, while you're drinking at the inn, the beer begins to freeze. So instead of fractal patterns, it's like snowflakes, like a snowflake effect. And the beer freezes solid, right? Because the balance between winter and summer is disrupted. Somehow the hags are involved. I'm not sure quite what it is. Maybe the hags are actually the queen of winter's mothers or something like that, and they're keeping her from the king of summer or something like that. And because she's so sad and because she's so distraught, right, that energy is spreading beyond the forest boundaries. And it's kind of like that scene from The Mummy where they're all going to go do a shot and all the alcohol turns to blood. So that'd be cool. What is the asterisk is for? Oh, okay. If someone gets a duplicate, then go to the first asterisk. If you get another duplicate, go to the second asterisk, and so on and so forth. Here are some suggested monsters that you could use for this. This is probably one of the cool. All right, I don't like one-shots. This is actually legitimately awesome. And I say this because it's not on full rails. It's going to be different every time you run it. It's going to be a unique experience. It relies on the players' cooperation a little bit. It's going to test the GM's ability to, I hope, interpret and put their own spin on things. Again, I do think that the GM has a role to play. I like random stuff. I like oracles because I like the challenge of having to integrate all this stuff. A lot of one-shots are just, here's 3 combat encounters in a row with maybe that one encounter that's for role-playing and making skill checks. This is actually a really good example of how a one-shot could be a lot of fun. And even so far as to say, in my mind, maybe at the end of the adventure, one of the players takes the role of the King of Summer, right? And is no longer basically a player character. And that would be the end of the movie, right? This kind of bittersweet Frodo moment, where a character, kind of crosses over in order to save the village or whatever. And that's the end of the movie, right? Lady Hawk ends. Move on to the next, that's it. There is no tomorrow. It's a movie, not a TV show. I would be okay with that. This actually, I'm going to say it, I wouldn't mind running this as a one-shot. This is actually this is done incredibly well. Oh, yeah, that's great, Dirty Fell.
Tundle tipped $10. Assigned to Super Chat goal, please. Welcome back. Thanks for covering this. Cool game.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you, Tundalus. I will move that over to the Super Chat. if it'll let me. Sometimes it can be a pain in the butt. It can take a minute to update. Very cool. So, yeah. By the way, respect to covering an OSR game that's like 14 years old. We got like 60 viewers here, folks. Yeah. This is why I have a Patreon, because otherwise I would be fucked. Thanks, everybody. I mean that, like, legitimately. Like, one of the cool things about my Patreon is I can cover games like this for, 2 hours instead of, having to cover some new 5e thing or something. Anyways, here's what I like about this, believe it or not. I think this system here does a good job of teaching a GM how to GM. That is something I most of the time one-shots I think are embarrassing. They are so on rails. They are so prescriptive. This is more descriptive. This is more, I think, challenging the GM to make sense of all of this and could tie it together into a coherent theme and work with your players to do so. I think that's really cool. That, I think, is actually something to be applauded. I love that this is, this feels a lot like playing a game of Microscope at the same time. And I think that's really neat. So we've got sprites and elves and pukas and redcaps and ogres and the fairy lord. We've got giant birds and insect swarms and unicorns. And then the next one is the hidden cult, which we'll leave. Here's the problem, Tundalus, because I think on one hand, this is exactly what, all right, there's a quote, right? Ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. So I think, like, the problem is that, things like this would be very challenging, I think, for that shaky friend who wants to try GMing. But this is exactly what makes someone into a good or better GM, right? And I think a lot of one-shots and a lot of adventure paths and a lot of whatever are the equivalent of that boat that never leaves dock. And, you're not going to run into any problems out there when you're just, safe at the harbor. I see. Making it more communal and prompted. Okay, that's fair. But I do feel like a lot of GMs really struggle, Bus, to try to interpret things. I think interpolation is one of the weakest GM skills that people have right now, which is the ability to take two ideas and make something of it, And I think I think for me, that's one of my major, most important skills that I have as a GM. And I think this game, even this process here, really, asks you to do that, which is awesome. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. Tasty Trekkie, thank you for the super chat. Controversial opinion: Microscope ain't an RPG. We were debating RPGs, of course, in the Discord the last couple of days. But generally speaking, I will say this. I tend to agree with you. I don't think Microscope is a role-playing game. I don't know what a role-playing game is, whether you define it as, like, taking on the personality and ideas of a singular character, or you define it as, playing a role within a game. And, a singular role. And, instead of being an army or instead of representing a corporation, you're representing a person, and I'm the fighter. My role is I'm the fighter. And my job is to fight monsters and explore the dungeon. Cool. That's role playing. Or maybe role playing is just a game where you have a character with stats and they gain levels and their stats go up. In either case, any of those definitions, Microscope fails to, officially answer it. Now, Ben Robbins calls it a fractal role-playing game, I think, of endless possibilities or something like that. I think it's a TED line. No, this is Microsoft. This is Microscope Explorer. This is the expansion. I don't know where I don't know where an actual copy is, but anyways. So I tend to agree with you, Tasty Trucky. Hey, Scotty P, thanks for supporting First Looks. Well, thank you so much, Scott. That takes us over the limit there. So that's awesome. So I will go ahead and I will dip that over into this. Hey, Dirty Phil. Too many prompts and the new DM becomes dependent on the prompts and may lose their agency. So here's the thing about that. And I'm going to go ahead and put yours at this. I think the GM having agency is overrated, Dirty Phil. You're already so powerful as a GM, you know? And I think more GMs should learn to have less agency. You know? I think that's a better skill to potentially have. And sort of, you know, feel like you're, you know, off the broken beat. Oh, I had that turned off. Oh, that's why. Because I had Bob on. Silly, stupid Bob. And when Bob is on, I turn off the text to speech. So that way, like, while we're talking, we don't get, like, cut off by, like, the thing going. That's why that didn't speak. All right. Okay. That should work here. Well, thank you, Jackal Torn Moons, for $5. I think that puts us to our tip goal. Jackal Torn Moons says, I missed it there. Instead of mega games, can we talk Shadow Tide, Brickbound, and Shadow Rail? What do you want to just turn a bonus stream? I thought that one was doing well in the poll, Jackal. That was going to get its own stream in its entirety. I mean, that's my ticket to ride, buddy. That's how I'm going to make some money. It's how I'm going to break free of the trap of this YouTube content creator hell. We could talk about it. I mean, just as a kind of a general shit, you know, kind of a general shitting around on things. But yeah, Brickbound, Shadow Rail. I mean, Shadow Rail. See, this is the problem, Jackal. No one even knows what we're talking about because this is all Knights of Last Call Patreon stuff. We start with like a mostly stupid idea. Then we meme upon it, and then eventually it becomes completely and ridiculous and absurd. And then the thing that we end up focusing on is the completely dumb and absurd thing. So, Simon, I kind of agree with that. Where I consider role-playing games to be under the umbrella of storytelling games. I think that's probably, storytelling games is a very broad set of games, and I think role-playing games are sort of underneath it to a certain extent. I think throwing a noob GM into the deep end is a great way to create a player for life. Yeah, Tundalus, I mean, I hear you. I think you're right, but I also think that the modern day one shot is so, I don't know. It doesn't challenge. It doesn't ask anything of the GM, and I think that's the problem, So, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I tend to be a bit more of a, throw them in the deep end, see if they can swim type person, I guess. So, yeah. And I also do think limitation breeds creativity. So I'm all for it. I think the process of taking randomly generated ideas and having to make them work, that's a remarkably fun element of creativity. I enjoy that process. And by the way, I enjoy that process from the game mechanics themselves. This is why I love Powered by the Apocalypse games, right? Because PBTA, the dice demand that the fiction goes in a new direction. And it is my job to maintain that sort of fictional integrity and that the mechanics have taken in a new direction. And so I have to, work overtime to make sure that this happens in a believable way. And I think I find that process very, very fun. For sure. I should change the Final Fantasy VII anthem into the Saban train suplex on slow motion. We have had the Final Fantasy VII anthem for a very long time. We could definitely change that up. It's been there for a very long time. When you say modern one-shot, are you talking about this game? No, I'm talking about the 3 combat encounter standard one-shot that a lot of games have, Pathfinder 2, D&D, that type of thing, stuff that you would find in the starter box of most, mainstream RPGs. Also, I think you get a lot more replayability from this than you do, Now, I still believe that I think a 4 or 5 shot is much better than a 1 shot for learning a game. 100%. Luke Crane says, and Tor Olvestead said, you can't play Torchbearer once. You have to play a couple of times. And until you've played it, 6 or 7 or 8 sessions, until you've gone through several cycles of play, right? Of going into the dungeon, getting your conditions grounded down, doing some camps, getting enough treasure to go back to town, using your money, being broke, going back into the dungeon, being refreshed, going deeper. And once you've done that cycle a couple of times, you start to see some of the hidden deeper DNA. And I think that's very true. Yeah. So, we didn't get into, all the spells and magic and all that other stuff. I'm not really worried about that, but, for the most part, it looks like it's pretty basic, D&D type stuff. Again, scorching, produce flame, color spray, charm person, that type of stuff. But we do have some advice here from the GM about how to build the village. We talked about this before, right? About how some of the icons for the players ask them to add an NPC, and some of the players ask them to add a location, an NPC or a location. You'll notice the map already has a place for the inn centered at the town. I guess there's maybe I don't have it, but I guess there's let me see if I have it here. Oh, here's the village map. Okay. a very impressive map here. The village of blank with the inn in the center of it. Okay. The players and game masters will now take turns adding locations and important NPCs to the map. Anytime the players see this symbol to the left, they may add a location of interest to the map. This location may or may not be directly related to the result they just rolled on the table. The player should feel free to use the inspiration to make something up. So again, it basically starts becoming like a game of Microscope, or more importantly, like a Quiet Year, which is a lot of fun. And if we're ever at a convention, you should totally convince me to, I would say run it for you, but the Quiet Year doesn't really involve a GM. So same thing with this. This is to create an important NPC. By the end of character creation, you should have a rough map of the village with some interesting locations and people to use during the game. Very neat. Running the game. This is advice for the GM. Keep things moving. Oh, well, we're already starting with what I would consider to be golden fucking advice. When things start getting slow, ramp up the drama. Ideally, your players will be driving the story forward from the beginning of the play. They've had a lot of odd recent events. However, sometimes things drag or the characters find themselves lost. When this has happened, throw something new at them. The cliche is a sudden attack. The secret here is this. Most players want to roll dice, and they want their rolls to matter. You achieve this by predicting interesting obstacles and clues that play to their information on their character sheets, ability scores, skills, family, and personal histories. So what I'm reading here is if the players start, talking to each other and role-playing, using the term role-playing, right? It's my job as the GM to be like, you need to stop that, start rolling dice, and suddenly something interesting and important is happening. And you know what? I'm approved. I approve. Grimwild does have a collaborative map building section, Simon, and it's really good. R.I.P. Grimwild. Grimwild is dead. Long live Grimwild. Yeah, fuck your role playing. Let's keep going. Root would call root cause that hard framing, and I'm here for it. Make it personal. Tie things directly into your characters' lives, friends, and families. Good general advice. I came here to roll dice, not socialize. Take care, King Hodop. A lot of dice. You wouldn't like it. Just kidding. Avoid illusionism. Oh, wow. Okay. Very important. And speaking of the whole idea of the GM sort of disclaiming decision-making and avoiding bias, illusionism is a term used to describe a particular problem with seat-of-the-pants GMing in role-playing games. Illusionism happens when a game master makes sure that every choice the characters make is the right choice, or vice versa, the wrong one. For instance, the characters enter a small cave and come to a junction. One way leads to the end of the quest, and the other way to something else. The GM waits for the characters to say which way they are going, and then places the end of the quest in this direction. This is certainly not the worst thing in the world, but it can make some players feel that their choices do not matter, and they would be right. If the evil wizard will be down the right-hand path if I choose it, but down the left if I chose that way instead, then why did I just choose at all? Again, for a character to have agency, they have to be making an informed decision, and that decision has to matter. You can avoid illusionism very easily, even when things are running on the fly. If there are two ways to go, simply decide which way leads to the evil wizard, even if you only make that decision 5 minutes beforehand. So this is this question of when can a GM make a decision before, what's that, what's the statute of limitations on illusionism? And I think that's something that only you in your heart can know. Like, are you honorable? Do you really love God? No one can tell you that. You have to sort of come to that conclusion yourself. But at the end of the day, one of the most important skills that you can learn from GMing, and there's a lot of people who aren't even aware that they have this, is holding on gently, learning to let go. And people sometimes don't even realize how hard they are holding on. And so I think, learning to let go and to hold on gently and to, draw maps, fill in the blanks, to play to find out what happens. There's a reason that these PBTA truisms are repeated a lot. Is because it's something that I think a lot of people have a really hard time with, for sure. Tone. It's about young heroes getting in over their heads. Their world is gritty and dark, but it's not grim, right? It's kind of bright. What is it? Bright dark? Is that it? Bright dark. Right? It's a dark world, but the characters have hope. The characters aren't cynical. The characters aren't these sort of disillusioned, nihilistic, people. They represent hope in a dark world, right? So bright dark is the term that I think we usually use these days. Magic is mysterious and dangerous. No magic shops or whatever. A mage PC is likely to be the only wielder of magic in the village beyond the witch. If you cast a spell like Burning Hands or Conjure Darkness, it will be told about stories in the village for a long time. It's got that kind of low magic, fantastic version of the game. Good advice. I mean, for a very short GMing section, making things personal, keeping things moving, and avoiding illusionism and maintaining your tone. I mean, those are really good advice. Right. Yep, exactly, Tasty Truckee. And I'm a big fan of that. I like Grimdark to a certain extent, but I find it could be a little bit off-putting. Grimdark almost becomes, almost like a Flanderism, where it becomes a mockery of itself. And so, it's almost so absurd that it's, problematic. But at the same time, I want a world that has problems. I want a world that has issues, because that's why you need heroes. If everything in this world is great and grand and super, if there's, I'm going to point a finger here at Pathfinder 2, but like if you have a metropolis like Absalom, where there's, trolls in 3-piece suits and they're sitting out on the, they're sitting out on the boardwalk and they're drinking coffee and reading the morning's newspaper as, you know, a parade goes by. It's hard to like want to be a hero in that world where everything is just so good, you know. I might be broken most of the time when I play it. The players are the problem in the world. Ooh, yeah, maybe you are broken. This is very cool. Short, simple, sweet. Playbooks are pretty cool. You know, classic tropes of, you know, again, I recognize a lot of these characters and tropes from, you know, some of the things like The Dark is Rising, the Earth-Sea cycle, and the like. Even Wheel of Time. Maybe even Record of Lodoss War. It's basically just an OSR game that, if you want to use some optional rules, can even be basically turned into 3rd edition D&D. It only has the warrior, the rogue, or the rogue and the mage, which I like. Those are my 3 favorite things there. So, very cool. Middle Earth is a dark world at the start of Lord of the Rings, but that does mean that it's not hopeless or that good people can't make a difference, even if it comes at huge cost. Yes, I very much agree. I think, you know, Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings is very much an example of sort of that bright, dark type world, you know? So, you all love saying system is setting, but what about setting is system? I think the oracle tables and flavors here are what make the game. That's an interesting question. What about setting is system? The problem, I'm biased because I usually think of things from like a bottom up perspective, you know? I don't think of top down. So I always think of bottom up design, not top down side. But, you know, obviously Magic the Gathering, you know, has many sets which are top down design where you start with a world or a setting that has this fundamental premise, and then you build a system that supports and enhances that premise, in which case the setting has sort of driven and designed the system. I don't know that this happened here. There's not a whole lot that I see in the class mechanic design that, you know, that really ties to that. So I don't know about that. Again, if you want to be very, I don't want to say cynical. Let me put it another way. I have played in campaigns that only lasted 10 sessions, but we spent like 3 or 4 or 5 sessions on session 0 creating the shared campaign world that we were going to run for that, you know, 8 shot or that 10 shot. And you know what? That was the best part of the campaign. So I guess what I'm saying is you could, like, for Traveler is a great example of this. Making Traveler characters is fun. Sitting down with your friends and making Traveler characters is enjoyable. I find making a Pathfinder 2 character or 5th edition character painful and boring. There's almost nothing to it. You just assign your ability scores and then you pick 1 feat from a choice of 6. That's it. Going through this process of rolling on the tables, in some ways you could say that is the game. You know, the whole actually part where we actually have to go and play the game is kind of a bonus, right? Like, I could easily see the whole session being like, yeah, we made characters, we described our characters, we made this cool little village, we described all these strange problems, and it's like, oh, well, what happened? Well, actually, we never actually got a chance to even really start the adventure. And you're like, oh, so it was really lame? And you go, no, it was totally cool. And the reason I know this is because I've had tons of experiences with people at conventions or even in my own game group where, you know, we sit down and we play a game like with the backstory cards, or we do a Fabula Ultima style collaborative world building game, or we play something like a Quiet Year or Microscope, and people go, cool, that was a really sweet, awesome campaign setting / world that we just built. I don't really need to or even want to play it. It's cool that we built it, you know, and I think that is something to be said. So if you want to say that part of this game is just that character creation process. Now, the author seems to suggest that is not the case. They seem to be just doing this so that you can create something and then just jump into it. But for me personally, I would have a lot of fun just, rolling this shit up and calling it a day. This is why I'm convinced that the Golden Cat saying, this is why I'm convinced I'll like Mythic Bastionland despite my libeling of the book itself, since you've had a lot of problems with it. It depends on the PBTA game, Simon, but absolutely. I mean, if you look at a game like Avatar or Masks or, a lot of the games from Magpie for sure, the game basically says, what is this game about? What is this system about? What is this genre about? Okay, let's create mechanisms and reward systems all in place that serve that genre, right? So yeah, Tundalus. Yeah, I think I probably agree with you here. I think the card gen is doing double duty, and it's clearly in a meaningful way setting the stage for the adventure, and that's really neat. Right, exactly. By the time you cannot play the game unless you go through those character creation processes. I mean, you could, right? There's nothing stopping us from using these core rules. And, look, as we pointed out, the game does have rules for making a character, right? But I think we can all agree that if this was the only thing that this game had, we'd all be going, Golden Cat, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why did you even put this game on the list, right? And even the game says, you're not supposed to do this, right? You're supposed to use the character playbook. You're supposed to follow those prompts. You're supposed to do that stuff. So, very cool. I also, by the way, in spite of and in challenge of people, I think this game, and by this game, I mean this process of choosing a playbook and then rolling, would be incredibly lessened to a degree to the which I would even say the game would almost lose all of its point if you had a table or a player or a GM who thought like or felt like that you should just be able to pick what you want from this list. Now, I don't see anything in this book that said, the kind of bullshit, cop-out, horse shit, horrible, roll, parentheses, or if you don't like what you rolled, just pick something you like. When something says that, I want to stab myself in the face several times before I pass out not from the pain, but from the relief that my eyes no longer have to read that. I hate that line. It's like such a cop-out. Just have a D12 or not. And there's people, I think Beowulf might be one of them. I'm not sure. I could be disparaging Beowulf, so I probably who it might not be Beowulf, who goes, no, you didn't know which one you wanted until you rolled. No, that's not the way that you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. No, you roll and that's what you get. End of story. Full stop. In fact, rolling and then realizing, oh, I really wanted number 4. That's great. That's awesome because now you don't get that, Picking is going to guarantee that you end up with the most boring character. I agree. And that's not even Simon, has nothing to do with min-maxing. You could have a character who's a mage and they want all the constitution. It's about the reason we play role-playing games is to lose control. It's to disclaim decision-making. This is the essence of what this is asking for. And I think that people do themselves an incredible disservice in modern games. It speaks to this culture of play where, we all use point buys and character stat arrays, and our every single fighter in D&D starts off with every single fighter in Pathfinder 2 starts off with an 18 strength. It's like, yeah, you don't get to discover a character. Right? You get to make a character. And I don't like that. Right? I like this process of feeling not in control of my character. And I think that's just something that I think I've had to come to terms with is just very different from my belief and my perspectives of how I approach role-playing games than a lot of people. You know, I kind of come to role-playing games to not have that control, you know. And I consider myself a gamist, Simon. So I do like mechanics, and I do like that, you know, idea of I guess of winning. But a good, a Magic the Gathering comparison, and I know that people don't like this, but I know a lot of people, right? Magic the Gathering is very gamist, right? The card game. But I know a lot of people who love Magic the Gathering, but will not touch draft, right? They want to play constructed. They want to play their commander deck that they built. They customized it. It has the 100 cards that they wanted to put in the deck, and it's made according to their standards. They have complete control over what they make their deck. And I'm a gamist, but my favorite format is draft, or sealed to a lesser extent, but draft, because I don't have control. There is an element of me just having to make the best of what the randomness of the packs give me, and it's going to take me in a different direction. And I think it makes you a better player. Cube is good too, Simon, by all stretches. I mean, Vintage Cube, I think, is like probably the coolest way and best way to play Magic. I used to have a Vintage Cube, a real Vintage Cube, not a proxy Vintage Cube, an actual Vintage Cube with an actual, Black Lotus and Mox, and back when I had those cards. Before I sold them all so that I could keep this channel alive. Cheers. Anyways, so I can enjoy lack of control and randomness and still enjoy a gamist approach. In that I think this to me is the equivalent of playing draft. You know, I wanted to make a red-white aggro beatdown deck, okay, but I ended up, with a blue-green dirtily control deck, So again, yeah, it would have been cool if my witch ended up with all wisdom and intelligence. Instead, they ended up with max con, and that's cool. That's a different story, and I think that's really, really cool. So. Well, Cinnabos, that's a whole separate, stretch of the imagination. I do think that there is a tendency for people to be very off-put by, what was supposed to happen, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I've seen that before in games where we sort of, try to include some element of randomness in, like, with our community games, and people are just, like, shocked that there's might be something that's outside of their control. Interesting. So Tasty Trekkie says, soft disagree. I like a degree of randomness, but still want to be able to have some control over my PC generation. Totally random PCs leave me cold. That's fair. Now to be clear, Tasty Trekkie, I don't disagree with you. I think Traveler is a great example of where you still get to make some choices, right? Because literally just going down random, but to be clear, you do make one choice, which is what class you're going to be. To that end. But I do tend to agree with you that having some control is probably for the better. Well, a couple of things, Mateo. Number one, sometimes it's just about the background element. But the other thing to remember is that when you're playing a game where the abilities check is roll a d20, no modifier, and it has to be equal to or less than your character's stat, having a +2 to strength or a +4 to strength is a big fucking deal. So, you are significantly favored to, make a strength check or to be able to make a, constitution check or something like that if asked to do so. That's one of the advantages because of it being D20 roll under. Right. Which kicking indoors, right? Sorry, Derek, but people, you don't have the right to push the tip goal. I need to sleep for work tomorrow. Well, like we're hanging on, but we are about to wrap up. So we did start late today at 8, but it was a short game, or relatively short, and a lot of the mechanics there are just D20 OSR. We know what we are, But that was kind of a cool approach. And I have to say something. Yeah, I'm impressed. Like that would actually be a kind of a cool, fun one shot. But it does have the fundamental problem that I have, which is, oh, hey, this is a really cool, interesting scenario that we've just built together. I want to keep playing it. What happens next? Where do we go from here? Oh, what's with these mysterious Fey orbs? Like, is it something to do with like the seasons or like the terrain? Like, what we've gotten pulled into this Fey world, and the witch is now the king of summer, and suddenly I don't want to play a one shot. I want to keep going. This is a really cool world that we just built. Hell, we just randomly pulled this, for shits and giggles, But yeah, it's pretty cool. Simon says, Tundalus, I'll take your word for it. I will check it out. Tundalus is being coy, Simon. Tundalus is the author of Trespasser. So very cool. Neat, unexpected, and exactly, Jake, for 2012, pretty good. Well, that's the goddamn right there.
Scott P tipped $5, filling the bar.
Well, yeah, I deserve that. Couldn't have just said good night. That's all right. I need this money to live, so at least get the whiteboard up if I'm to be tired tomorrow. Well, the whiteboard may have to come out. Tundalus, I don't self-promote. Excuse me. Well, I was going to wrap up, but we will jam for a little bit, I guess. I think Jackal earlier was saying we should talk about Shadowtide. That's true. Noah did say how long the post game needs to be, right? It's a 15-minute overtime. First team to score, and so the overtime could just be a couple minutes. That is true. No, but one of the things I always do whenever I'm traveling, I think about things. I think about games. I think about stuff that I could do that would probably be way more successful than what I'm doing right now. Or I think about things that will absolutely not be a success for me at all. And I did both. So for the official Beyond the Wall, we're going to say, close. But we're going to go and kind of maybe, shoot the shit about some other stuff here. Doesn't work that way, Tundalus. It doesn't work that way.
Tundalus tipped $5. Please remove this amount from the tip goal so you can go to bed. Okay.
I will do this. We will just briefly touch on a couple of key topics that I kind of have been kicking around. If you are a loyal follower of the Discord, it was just to say that you read the thousands of messages that get posted in Dumpster Fire or Open RPG Gaming a day, then most of this will be already sort of known to you. But yeah, this is not a review. It's a good example. But as a first look, I have to say the mechanics are about as bog standard and boring as they ever could be. It's OSE with a sprinkling of 3rd edition on it. It's BXD&D with a sprinkling of 3rd edition on it. There's absolutely nothing here to write home about. But the playbook and but especially the scenario generation, very, very cool. So I will say that what is this game about? Randomly creating a one shot. Do the mechanics support that? Yes and no. No, because it's boilerplate OSR, but yes, because it has these really cool life path choices and you roll on these tables and it's really neat. And then do the mechanics reward you for doing it? Absolutely not. We pointed out that if you save the kingdom 8 times over, it was barely enough for you to level up. But, hey, if the game's supposed to only be a one-shot, what's even the point? Of course, it says something that the game goes to level 10 when, in theory, it's designed for a one-shot. So, I'm going to say from a Jared Sorensen Big 3, it's a mess. But that doesn't mean it can't be cool. Tundalus is a Luddite and refuses to run Trespasser on. You know what? I respect Tundalus even more now. for sure. Lavius is on a 450 watch streak. Oh, 40 stream streak. Look at that. Twitch has the randomest shout outs. All right. I guess we'll get this out. All right. Let me swap. And check. Just swapping over to the headset, make it a little bit easier to work on. You guessed it. You know it. You love it. The whiteboard. There she is. Welcome everybody to the bonus. So, what we were talking about here was, stuff that I've been kind of noodling around with, and again, ultimately one of the things that we really have to accept here in my instance is that Derek and the Knights of Last Call will forever be sort of torn between two wolves, right? Which is what I want to do and what I need to do. And, this has sort of been the sort of the drama that I've been facing with the last 6 months, because I don't have a job anymore and I need to make money. And the fact that I even get to consider doing this is amazing. But, I have a Patreon and it's awesome. And it basically makes my needs, covers my bills. But, it's nice to be able to, have some extra money and save, money and be able to afford more than the minimum insurance and all that other stuff. So there's this idea of how do I grow the channel? But how do I do it with, maintaining my integrity? It's really tough to do. So we've been sort of kicking around this idea of what are the things that Derek could do? And one idea that we had, because again, I was out on the boat and I was sailing, and this kind of started, it started with Fabula Ultima, but it really it started really with Twilight Sword. But I've noticed it now more and more and more. There's just been a spat of games where basically it's a game that is totally inspired, ripped off by an IP, but is not that IP, right? It's not the One Ring, right? The One Ring is clearly the Lord of the Rings game. It is clearly, it has the license from Middle-earth and the whole 9 yards. The Modiphius games, right? Dune, Star Trek. These are clearly Dune and Star Trek. They have them on the title. They have licensed characters and all this other stuff. But there's been this sort of splat, this surge of games where it's like this thing that you love, but we totally don't have access to it. So we kind of have to just make it really inspired by and take advantage of this, type of sort of thing. So we have been, So that's the first thing, is this, obsession with IP. The second, again, this is Derek putting on his like cynical hat. Not cynical, but I'm not even saying that these are bad ideas. I'm just saying this is where my brain is at. So that's the first thing, right? Is these sort of IPs that aren't IPs. IP being, by the way, intellectual property, for people who don't know what intellectual property is. The second is, of course, 5e compatible. And failing that, if it's not 5e compatible, then it should at least be a Shadow Dark. Case in point, Professor Dungeon Master, 150,000 plus subs, one of the largest dungeon tubers out there. He's making his own game, and even he decided to go with Shadow Dark because you don't want to face that juggernaut. But Shadow Dark is also kind of 5e compatible in its own way, anyways. Now, a lot of these games, to be fair, Twilight Sword, for example, or whatever, create their own systems, which is cool, which is great. But I do think that is, potentially something that you have to consider, something that is a challenge. So, while I was on vacation, were jokingly talking about, like, what are some IPs? What are some IPs that we could sort of hack into that could also be 5e compatible and or Shadow Dark compatible, so that we can double hack into those? And two of them that we came up with were as follows. Were number one, which is Pirates of Dark Water, a beloved cartoon show that was only got one season from like the early 90s, / Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, I know that there's a lot of pirates out there, but a lot of the pirate games, I think, are a little bit too like... Jackal says, wait, should we be giving away our deepest, darkest secret? You said you wanted to talk about this. That was what your tip said. All right. So that's just the first one. We'll stop there. And the second one, nobody watches this anyways, Jackal. Actually, right, remember my theory? Okay, everybody remember this moment. Okay? Remember this moment. My theory is that all of the successful dungeon tubers watch the channels of the much, much smarter and more scholarly, smaller channels who don't play the algorithm game, and then they just mine those channels for content and ideas, and they just ruthlessly steal from them. And then they play it as their own. This is my tinfoil hat theory. I have no proof of any of this happening. So if any of these ideas come out, you know where it happened. So Pirates of Dark Water / X Pirates of the Caribbean. And to be very clear here, I'm really focused here on Pirates of the Dark Water. I would just include Pirates of the Caribbean or Treasure Island, Treasure Planet, to kind of, Cineboss has it 1,000% correct. Pirates of the Caribbean is for reach. Dark Water is the real thing. I mean, this is about as deep as it could be buried. Tundalist says, thanks for sharing this on stream. Tundalist, we also openly talked about it in the Discord, so there's that. It's a great idea. I'll make it and release this first before Derek gets to it. Well, that is a given, so anyone could possibly do that. So basically, the idea here would be the name that we were sort of jokingly throwing around, right, was Pirates of Shadow Tide. And the reason we called it Shadow Tide was just because we had a game called Dragon Tide, but we also had this mega dungeon called Shadow Deep. And, the idea being that, like, Dark Water... the idea being that, like, Dark Water and Shadow Tide, if you know those IPs, then you know that Dark Water is actually like a thing. It's not just a cool name. Dark Water is like a malevolent kind of evil entity that spreads across the land. And so the idea would be the same, right? We would just be stealing this IP, but not actually calling it Pirates of Dark Water. Instead, you would have a world of, you would have a world where this mysterious, dark for the shadow tide, right, is spreading across the oceans of I mean, the name of the world of Pirates of Caribbean was Myrrh, right? So come up with some name that's like Myrrh, Nox or something. And the shadow tide is spreading, just like dark water is spreading. And basically the idea is the same. Anyways, and that's it. It's just to use Shadow Dark / 5e compatible and totally steal from Pirates of Dark Water, which is this sort of niche but beloved, IP from the 90s, and really tap into that nostalgia. Throw in a little Pirates of the Caribbean, throw a little bit, but we did read the Pirates of Darkwater TTRPG, and it's very much a product of 1993. It reads like fucking GURPS. It's really, really terrible. As you might expect, So, we would be, it's very dated. Yes, it was. No, so, the key would be, you would need, now, anybody who's played Shadow Dark knows this, but, you need 4 to 6 classes, and classes in Shadow Dark are a joke, right? I mean, they required no design whatsoever. 4 to 6 classes, right? I don't know, 4 to 8 races, ancestries, right? Again, very simple, easy, basic, right? Handful of, new, monsters, items, gear. The only place where there would be work is a couple of things. First things is, and I'm going to put a question mark here, new spell system. The reason is because the spell system in Pirates of Darkwater is called the Ecomancer. And so, do we need to create a different school of magic or different system of magic for ecomancy? Or something similar to it, again, legally distinct, serial number scratched off. It's kind of like a druid wizard in kind of a weird way. I kind of like the idea of potentially kind of stealing maybe a little bit of Dark Sun vibes, and because it doesn't have to be, it has to be close, but it has to be like a 1-to-1. I like the idea of potentially having like sort of the preserver and the defiler vibe, right? And that could work really well. Monkey Birds Cinnabos are 100% on the list. But we could have this idea of like, characters that like draw their power from like nature that isn't corrupted, but then we could also have people that draw their power from this corrupting power of the Shadow Tide, right? It could be like a, drawing upon power of evil to fight evil type thing, but whatever. Again, I'm really going for, and maybe in violation of a lot of old school stuff, I really would want a bright, dark vibe for the game, which I think is very appropriate for, Pirates of Darkwater. So the first is a new spell system, right? This is where the actual work is, right? Is a new spell system. Do you need new skills or whatever like that? Secondly, rules for, tide touched. Like, do we want some sort of taint or some sort of system, that sort of, builds up as because of, the growing power of the Shadow Tide, which is, again, part of the idea of dark water. And this is going to be if you ever do bullet journals, this is a symbol for urgent, and this is a symbol for important, which is ship battles. You have to get this right. If you can get this right, and you've got the Shadow Dark system will take care of the rest, along with some cool classes, ancestry, some new monsters, magical items, gear, maybe a cool spell system to sort of represent the sort of preserver ecomancer style, like which was what Tula was, if you remember the show. And maybe some kind of sea wizardry, or like a sea witch versus an ecomancer or something. Maybe some sort of dark spreading tide touch system. But if you can get the ship battles right and do it in a way that's cool, in a way that hasn't been done before, I think you could have a winner. And then we put on what we've learned, right, from Exalted Funeral. We combine that system, right, in the same Kickstarter with the campaign setting, right? So think Dolmenwood, think Land of Eam. Land of Eam came back with Mucklands, right? Dolmenwood was a game, and Dolmenwood was a campaign setting. So then we create this campaign setting, this kind of like, for those of you who didn't watch Pirates of Darkwater, the show that was on for like 23 episodes or something in the middle of the 90s. The idea is that you have a world that is, full of islands. It's a water world, basically. And there's this mysterious, malevolent force called Dark Water, which is spreading. And only the 13 treasures of rule, which are totally MacGuffins, they have to be recovered, reclaimed, and whoever has the 13 treasures rule, it's like you've got the Triforce, right? Does Ganon get the Triforce or does Link get the Triforce, right? Who gets the 13 treasures of rule? Is it Ren and his companions, or is it, the dread pirate Bluff, who will, remake the world in darkness and give it over to the Dark Water? So basically you're on a MacGuffin quest to, sail around and get into Saturday morning cartoon adventures and try to collect the treasures of rule. And that's basically the gist of the campaign setting. So it would be kind of like we jokingly called it is it an island crawl? Whatever. Is it an island crawl? Is it a hex boat? There was a lot of terminology about what we would call it. Now, McClure is quite accurate. In 50 years of the hobby, I haven't seen ship combat done right yet. And you know what, McClure? You are right. Well, I think the key would be to go back and watch those episodes and truly understand what they were doing with the ship. Because I understand there's a natural predilection to want to sort of invest in your ship and to build into your ship. Single being, anyone who knows me knows I love Earthdawn. I also love sailing. Like, Derek, have owned sailboats. I know how to sail. I enjoy sailing. So there's always an element here of me wanting to include my own love of sailing, for sure. So that's a big reason why a lot of my game worlds are always set on sort of, water worlds, archipelagos, and that type of thing. Because again, this is really cool. And I happen to have obviously completely loved this TV show when I was a kid. I had some action figures and all that other stuff. So anyways. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean, not my favorite movie in the world, I admit. But I do appreciate that it's sort of it's dark, but the characters are sort of, for the most part, noble-hearted, and they're trying to do the right thing. And there's even kind of an element of the MacGuffin there, right, of like trying to get back the cursed gold to, lift the curse or something. I really don't know the later movies, I will freely admit, but I don't know One Piece, Jake of Online, at all, because I don't know anime. But you know what, Jake? You're absolutely right. We should try to totally throw that in. G Helmet FP says, Ecomancy, are you talking like echolocation? Well, that would be echolocation. No, G Helmet FP. This was released in an era of the early 90s, late 80s when, we were trying to save the world and, pollution was bad. I personally think that Dark Water was a very not so heavy-handed metaphor for pollution, for corporate greed. And ecomancy was the idea of basically, kind of like Captain Planet magic. Yes, green, healthy, drawing from the power of the earth, that type of thing. One Piece is literally an island crawl. Well, that's a pretty cool way to do it. Somebody was saying about the people are pissed off about Seventh Sea. Here's what you need: amazing ship combat, highly intricate scar, peg leg, hook tables, ridiculously unbalanced black powder weapons that practically kill you and your target immediately. Well, so here's the deal that people may not understand. In Pirates of Darkwater, the pirates are the bad guy. The main characters are not pirates, nor are they, there's one former pirate who's sort of like a Han Solo, reformed pirate, who's turned over to a new leaf. The pirates of Dark Water are actually the bad guys. They're the ones that's Captain Bloth and his crew of flunkies who, chase the, ran around and, try to kidnap him and do bad things and get back his treasures of rule. So, by the way, if you don't like Firefly, don't watch Pirates of Darkwater because the show ended with them only getting like half of the treasures, and then the show ended. All right, hold on a sec here. Let me get my thing up here so I can actually. You guys can hear this at home. I'm going through my roadcaster. There it is. Okay. And then let me bring this up here. Oh, this is actually opening. I want the opening. Here we go.
The alien world of Myr is being devoured by dark water. Only Ren, a young prince, can stop it by finding the lost 13 treasures of wool. At his side is an unlikely but loyal crew of misfits. At his back, the evil pirate lord Blood, who will stop at nothing to get the treasures for himself. It's high adventure with the Pirates of Darkwater.
Yeah, so that's the gist of the that's the gist of the game there, or the gist of the thing. So, I guess pollution 1. Yes. Wait, so the people that kill and pillage for a living are the bad guys? Unbelievable. Yes. So one of the big problems I have with the pirates is like, no, pirates weren't good people. So it's good. There you go. Someone got it right. They got 8 out of 13. Thank you, Jackal. Did we ever think about did we ever think about ship situations? No, I don't know that we did. I think there's problems. I think there's a couple of problems. So the first problem, which is always strange to me from a ship battle perspective, is the first problem is this. People are already pretty crazy, but there's this strange desire to like suddenly turn like a role-playing game, right, into like a frickin', like naval simulator game, like where suddenly it's like, people are like plotting moves and like tracking and tacking, and you're like really, is this what we're doing? Like, is this how we want to play the game? And I mean, I think this approach is fundamentally completely flawed in role-playing games. I just don't think it's entertaining, and it's not fun. And what's up, Agile Monk? Here to give a shout out to my boy Derek. Love you, man. Thank you, Agile Monk. Appreciate you. Love you. 12 months of supporting the adventure. Agile Monk, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Cool to have you here. Been a while, man. Hope you're doing well. So I just think, I think you want the chaos and action of ship-to-ship combat. But, but if you go the Spelljammer route, people, they'll hang you up by your petards, as they say. They'll make you walk the plank. So it's kind of a, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know why people are just so obsessed. And I think part of the reason is because there's this desire to be like, I want to build up our ship and I want to, outfit it with cool things. And when you do that, you want those things to matter in this sort of, ship-like, game, which I think is, that's the problem. I don't really have a good solution to this, by the way, but I do think it is really important. So I agree with that. Agile Monk says, Derek, here's to a great 2026. Thank you, Agile Monk. Really appreciate you. Well, we're a month down so far. Pretty okay. We'll see. I mean, 2025 was horrible. 24 was really bad, like terrible. 2025 somehow was worse. So 2026, here's hoping. Thank you. There's a game called, well, it's PBTA, but it's called Rapscallion. So I'm not sure. I think we really have to sit back and ask ourselves, what is it the players want out of that experience? And I do think that I think we would be ice skating uphill if we try to ignore the ship. I think there's a natural decision, a natural desire for people to want to invest in their ship and to do cool things with their ship. So, I will say that the island hopping would definitely be inspired by, as most things are these days, the One Ring journey rules. I have no interest in doing a hex crawl. What I have an interest in doing is sort of creating and simulating a journey, a passage, we would even call it potentially, right? Like a passage. And I think that would be, pretty cool. So that's one idea that we have. And again, I think this could be reasonably successful. It's Shadow Dark. It's not the hardest thing in the world to build for. It's very popular. It builds on that DNA. It's probably it's mostly easily convertible to 5e or Shadow Dark. And again, the joke is just that, Pirates of Darkwater is, has this dark gloom idea. And again, people are like, I don't know that I like the name Shadowtide. People came up with different names. And I think you're missing the point. The point is that it's supposed to reference Pirates of Darkwater. Darkwater is a thing in that world. It's not just a cool name. It's not just a metaphor. It's an actual thing. It's an evil spreading thing. And so the joke was that we had Shadow Dark, we had Shadow Deep, so then we had Shadow Tide because we had Dragon Tide. I'm not saying that this has to be the name, right? It could be whatever like that, but yeah. So there's that. The second idea that we had, I think I came up with this just the other day, actually. So, right, beloved IP, right? Beloved IP, could it be 5e compatible and or Shadow Dark compatible? In this case, 5e compatible. And but again, it doesn't have to be right. Twilight Sword. How much money did Twilight Sword did? Did it do over $1 million? I think it did over $1 million, right? I want to say I didn't actually back Twilight Sword. You gonna load for me or no? I have no idea where my mouse went right now. Sorry. One of the problems with having 7 monitors, sometimes you lose your mouse. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Sword. Canceled. Well, that doesn't seem right. Was it backer kit? Okay, I can't apparently type right now, so I keep losing my mouse because I keep touching my. Oh, it was on backer kit. Okay. They did 700,000 euro. It's close enough to $1 million for me. So I mean, they did really well with this. And again, it's very much not the Legend of Zelda role-playing game, but it very much is the Legend of Zelda role-playing game. So what is the beloved IP that we could, beg, borrow, or steal to make a point out of? And now again, it could be 5e, could be Shadow Dark, but in this case it would probably be 5e. Lego, X, Minecraft, maybe X, Fortnite. And our tentative title was Brickbound. Now, inspired by some of the diegetic stuff that we had from Wilderfeast and from Heroic Deeds. So if you remember from Wilderfeast, in Wilderfeast, you literally kill monsters, okay, that are, hurt and damaged or whatever like that. And then you eat them, and then you actually gain their traits, because your character is this kind of chimeric blue mage, right? So if you killed and ate a creature, that had a natural camouflage ability, your character gained that ability. Well, the deal with the Lego is when you kill a monster, it, breaks into its pieces. And then you pick up those pieces, and then you can add those pieces to your character, right? So you literally build your character diegetically as you're playing through the game. And of course, death isn't on the table because when your character dies, right, they don't die. They just they break, they lose pieces, they shatter, they get broken up pieces, and you just have to get reassembled. So the idea is to, it's very Mega Man-esque, Jake of Online. Yeah, very Mega Man. Mega Man would be a good inspiration, right? I love those games growing up. I played up to Mega Man X. I think that was the last game. There's some people who love Bionicles. There's some people who love, the various elements of Lego, because that's the other part is, right? The characters are modular, but so is the campaign, right? We can take an element from Daggerheart and we can have campaign frames that function, like the different Lego, where you can mix and match. Like when I was a kid, I had all the space Lego, and my buddy Mike, he had all the pirate Lego. And what we did is we mixed all of our things together and we made cool futuristic pirate ships. And so it's like you have this idea that you can just kind of like meld these different ideas together. Plus, you could have just like, infinite, another option. Yeah, campaign construction. Another option is it could be super tactical. Like we could have it. This is an option. It could be super tactical, almost like a Final Fantasy Tactics, right? Because it's very grid based, right? You're what are they called? Studs. And so it's like, but it's like with facing, and it could be really, really thing, because the real take would be that we would try to create rules that would allow you to use your minifigs, right? And encourage people to use their minifigs and their Legos to make battle boards, right? You would take like a standard sized Lego battle board and you would put different pieces on it, and that would be the battle arena, if you will. And then you would have your minifigs. So that's the idea of Brickbound. Now, I'm not saying that stuff like this hasn't been done before. Jackal. I forgot about that. So if we wanted to go, because so this is again the classic thing with Derek. It's like, right, it's like Derek has idea. It's good. Takes it too far. Becomes bad. Obsess over it now that it's bad. Never build it. Because it's unfeasible. Right? That's the standard player practice. So one of the ideas, one of the things if you go back in our Discord, or even on this channel, maybe I have been talking about wanting to do a customizable RPG dice game forever. There was a game called Dice Forge. And in Dice Forge, you had these D6 that were modular. You could pop off the faces and put on new faces. And I wanted to do that in an RPG, where instead of customizing your character, you customized your dice. And so that way you didn't have to remember anything about your character. You just have to remember, you don't have the dice remember your character, right? And so the same idea is present here, where, because Lego, right, you build your dice. And so like, instead of, like you might have a D6, and when you get a new ability or a new power or a new thing that you gain, you pop off this face, right? And you pop on a new one, and the new one, is a, +4 or something like that, right? Cool. There's a tactical RPG on Steam. Yeah, so realistically doing this in person, it's terrible, just like stickers in Magic the Gathering, or like the board game Dice Forge, which was terrible. But so maybe there's an element of this that only works as a VTT RPG, a virtual tabletop role-playing game. I don't know, but, yeah, hey. At least I recognize my cycle. Yes, this is definitely the Derek cycle. Derek has an idea, it's good. I take it too far, it becomes bad. I obsess over it now that it is bad, and then I never build it because it's bad, so what's the point of doing it? But I can't ever take it, this is, I can't stop myself from getting to that point. So, Unfortunately, it does feel like I have a little bit of a sore throat. I'm hoping it's just from all the screaming and drinking on the cruise. I don't feel like I'm sick, so I think it's just a rough sore throat. So, yeah, we're doing all right. So so we're not going to talk about mega games. We're just talking about my two ideas. Plus, Roll for Combat is already publishing one Shadow Dark game. He can publish 2 Shadow Dark games, right? Right, buddy? What's another Shadow Dark game between friends? Where is that? All right. And then there's some, obviously there's some stuff for, of course, there's some stuff for Wilder Feast mega game. Which technically was the tip goal, but Jake says, I've always been looking for a pirate game to run anyways. Well, so the difference between my pirate game and other people's pirate games is other people's pirate games are pirate first. I don't want my game to be Pirate Borg. I don't want my game to be, dark and horrible. I want my game to be bright. And, the pirates are the bad guys, Bring them on. I've got Living Legends in stock, 4 more SKUs. That's all we need. We're going to need a 10 by 20, buddy. I hope you got it figured out. I mean, the Limithron guys are great, and I respect the vibe that they're going for, but that's just not the vibe that I want. I feel like pirates, people are so obsessed with like everything being like dark and tattered scale, like almost the ghost ship. Very, right. So then of course the absurd idea was an idea of creating a Thomas the Tank Engine Shadow Dark game. This is what happens with Knights of Last Call, right? We have a good idea and we start talking about it, and then we make a joke about it, and then we take the joke too far, and then somebody, creates a ChatGPT image, and it's really funny, and then everybody starts riffing on it, and before you know it, you get a Thomas the Tank Engine Shadow Dark game with a grim dark Thomas the Tank Engine. The problem is it's anime, and I don't like anime. I've seen things, I know things that are present in One Piece, and it just is very unappealing to me. So no. Like right off the rip, I also really don't like manga either. So just the style and the nature of the character. Some things, the things that people love about that are the things I don't like about it. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there is a character in One Piece who fights with 3 swords, and he carries the one sword around in his mouth. That is totally stupid to me. like I have no, like that alone is enough to turn me off to the entire IP. I know it's the type of stuff that like people who love anime and love manga, they love that kind of stuff. It's just not, it's not my kind of thing. One Piece is awesome. I have no taste. I don't have taste. 3 swords, that's child's play. Look up that one guy from Naruto. I believe you. I believe that is just child's play. But that's just an example of the kind of stuff that's very common in many types of anime. I believe the term is it shonen? Shonen? I don't know if One Piece counts as shonen. But like it's just some of that stuff is just, it's too over the top. It's too not serious enough. It's very like, beyond hyper realistic. It's beyond hyper fantastical. It's almost silly. It's almost absurd. It's very irreverent. And it's not my thing. Look, no. I totally get where people coming from, why they enjoy it. It's vibes, man. So yeah. Yeah, it's shonen. Okay, see, I know a few things. I know enough to know what I don't like. That's for sure. And so, like, if you look at the anime that I do like, the anime that I like from like the early '90s, late '80s, like things like Record of Lodoss War. Like, if you've ever watched Record of Lodoss War, there is nothing in it that is, jokey or absurd or silly or stupid, and it doesn't have like the kind of gratuitous silliness and stupid, and over sexuality and some of the other stuff. There's just a lot of stuff culturally that I just don't really vibe with anime about. So, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something from One Piece that couldn't be. Look, again, the whole point of this is to make money. Not to, just saying. Captain Smitty with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Captain Smitty. Says, I will upgrade my Patreon to whatever level is necessary to play in a Wilder Feast mega game. Also, let's make Brick Forged happen, because why not? Now, I will say, Captain Smitty, that Brick Forged, like Pirates of Shadowtide, would definitely be Shadow Dark. I think that would work really well for that. Brick Forged would be the game that I would be most interested in creating its own unique game. Like the way that Twilight Sword created its own unique mechanic. I do think that could be cool. But again, stealing the ideas from Wilder Feast, I think is great. As for the Wilder Feast mega game, that is something that it just won't. I can't let go, buddy. I can't let it go. It's such a cool idea. And the more I read the game and think through different play patterns, the more I'm like, wow, this would be so good for a mega game experience if people could just ever get over themselves and play the game. The real problem, though, is that to make it really sing, to make it really work, we would really have to like have some sort of great system in place. It's funny. I was riffing with ChatGPT, and let me see if I can bring it up. I was riffing with ChatGPT about some of the issues that I have with the mega game, and this is, by the way, to screw Golden Cat. There is no level higher than you have, so there. I said, let me see if I can find it. I was talking about some of the hurdles, that I have, and some of the problems, that I'm facing. And I was talking about my things, and I was talking about I feel like I need like a web-based. This is a great example of like even ChatGPT is thinking like you all, right? And so it says, I was talking about like things that I would want, and it would say, I said, I feel like my Wilder Feast mega game, I feel like all my mega games need a web-based game manager. And ChatGPT says, you're thinking like a product owner, not like a bootstrapper. Reality check. A web-based game manager is a luxury, not a prerequisite. What do you actually need to get things started? A source of truth, a way to track your state, a way for players to submit actions. This can be done with Google Sheets, Google Forms, manual GM reviews, and copy and paste workflows. Is it elegant? No. Is it scalable? Not yet. But is it enough to prove the concept? Absolutely. And, being like, you just got to get it done. And then I was like, I responded back to it. I go, no, I run mega games. We run our mega games on Google Sheets. We use manual GM review. I go, feedback is that it's always been that it's annoying, ponderous, and accuracy is middling. Manual GM review takes forever, creates bottlenecks, and many players are frustrated with the lack of transparency. So like the problem is that like it's giving me that advice that everybody else gives. Right. Exactly. Jackal knows, because Jackal helps run our mega games. Players hate that shit. Exactly. Like we've done that. We did do that. And you know what people said? This is unscalable and it doesn't work. And this whole like, just get it going. Just get it out there is terrible advice, because it doesn't work. Another example was Dragon Tide, which was our Dragon Bay mega game, had this town game that was supposed to function a bit like a worker placement resource game. And, Bob was like, I want to launch the game. And I went, okay. And Bob launched the game. And the town had no buildings. So there was nothing you could do in town. And immediately people were like, what am I supposed to do with all my town actions? There's nothing for me to do. Also, there's a bunch of stuff that costs resources that there's no way in the game for me to acquire. And that's when I went, oh, well, there were supposed to be about a dozen buildings in town that you could interact with. And those were supposed to give you the resources that you needed to be able to do the other things. And they were like, well, why aren't those buildings in the game? And it's like, because, yeah, get it going, boy. Get that out there. Let's fucking go. That's what that attitude leads to. Leads to disappointed players. See, it's the same people. I'm just ranting here, but like it's the same people who are like, oh, we would totally support an actual play of Pathfinder 2. And then when we made a Pathfinder 2 actual play that didn't have, Wheel of Pain, no one supported it. Anyways, long story short, it's great to have those vibes of just like get it out there and get it going. But you know what happens when people release shit like that? People complain. Everyone says, oh, we would love it. And then they go, oh, but actually now that I have to play it, I don't want to. So anyways, now this is true. Release it unfinished and patch it later. That works for the game industry. I don't know what the game industry is doing. Maybe it's just the pretty graphics or something, or I don't know. But they have got it figured out, Simon, because you are absolutely correct. Even ChatGPT is telling me to get off my ass. Listen, I'm saying ChatGPT full of shit because it didn't know. It was trying to tell me the advice that everyone else tells me, and I'm like, no, that's terrible advice. Because Heroes only mega campaign. Well, that depends. Jake says, I do really want to play in the Wilder Feast mega game though. I do too. I think it's, I at least I want to like run it. I don't necessarily, if I'm running it, I can't play it, but, right. Microtransactions too. Yes, exactly. You got to release stuff to ambivalent consumers. That's also a good solution. So I will say this before I end. Recently, what I have been obsessed about, not obsessed, well, obsessed is probably obsessed with Wilder Feast is that in the game, as written, in the game, there's this concept called harmony. And it's basically shared by the party, which the game calls the pack. And it basically represents like how well your group is getting along together, but also in harmony with nature. The problem is it doesn't really work for a mega game because your party changes from session to session, from session to session. And so I have really been kind of leaning into or interested in this idea of tying harmony to the actual, tying harmony to like the region that the people actually adventure in. But for the PC, I like this idea of an avatar or even like torchbearer / mouse guard-esque track where you kind of have this almost like Avatar, right? You had the balance track. And I like the idea of the characters in Wilder Feast are sort of, it's almost Vampire the Masquerade-esque, really. Like, your character is a wilder. They are a human who, in order to save humanity and the monsters that roam the world, sort of save nature, kind of lose their humanity to become more monstrous. But, I like this idea of this sort of yin-yang between the two of them. And, I love the idea from like a Avatar perspective or from like a nature perspective for those of you who play Torchbearer Mouse Guard, right? So the nature mechanic. The idea that, there's this like path of sort of righteousness and darkness. And that as you take certain actions, it might push you this way. And as you take different actions, it might push you this way. And, Avatar Legends, the RPG. And I like this idea because I think this is more about the individual PC. And I like the idea that you as your character can kind of go on this journey, and that the actions that your character is taking and are making will have consequences one way or the other. And I like the idea that, you know, your character might, by going this way, might gain certain benefits, but also potentially suffer from certain penalties or problems. But then if you go this way, you might also gain certain benefits, but suffer from certain, problems or things. Circle dot tracker spotted. Well, specifically, this is the balance track from Avatar Legends, but yeah, sure. It's the same thing. And so this is kind of where I've been. This is what. Oh, no. If you're talking about stealing deeds, oh no, we're gonna straight up steal those completely. Because I want to create a completely diegetic process for gaining your character's techniques and feats in the game. So that is already that's already a given. That's already stolen. Anyways, point is, I like the idea that like a geographical region, has this idea of its level of harmony, and that, you know, as harmony goes up, the monsters become stronger, which is good, but it also means that the monsters are stronger, which could potentially be bad. And that as the harmony goes down, communities become, you know, more pain, more suffered, but the monsters paradoxically also become weaker. And so as a group, as a mega community, as a mega game community, there's this idea of how do we manage and maintain the harmony, but it's also a really good feedback mechanism, because it means that as the community makes a region, presumably the default assumption is going to be that people want to increase the harmony of a region, right? That sounds like a good thing, right? Make it so that the communities that are living within that region, communities in Wilderfeast are communities of people, but it's also communities or species of monsters that they're all living in harmony with each other. But that also makes the monsters tougher. So it's kind of a nice feedback mechanism that as you start trying to make things really, really harmonious, it also becomes, the monsters become tougher. And so I kind of like that idea. It's just kind of a pushback mechanism. Paradox, and then same time, as the harmony becomes weaker, the monsters become weaker, right? And so that's kind of tying that to that's like for the community to manage a region's harmony. And you'll do that by going into that region in your sessions and, killing problematic monsters that have become corrupted by the frenzy virus, or saving a community of monsters who are at risk of being wiped out, or maybe a community of people who are trying to live in the land but need help. So all of those things that the players are doing can help build harmony. But on the PC side, I like the idea of sort of tracking your character's journey between sort of balancing being a human and being a monster. You are quite literal in this game. Humans always roll a D8. Monsters always roll a D20. And as a wilder, you get to pick which you roll. So it's quite literally a mechanical difference. Like your characters quite literally are straddling the line between human and monster. And I think that tracking that and showing that journey for your character is a really cool idea, especially if they have some interesting mechanical effects as well, which is really neat, I think. So, yeah. That's where we're at with stuff. When will it ever be a game? I don't know. Again, I think that to do it justice, to do it properly, I've seen a lot of mega games that have just been, it's one thing to ask people who are obsessed. Here's the difference. It's one thing to ask people who are obsessed with Pathfinder 2 or obsessed with Dragonbane to play in one of our mega games and then track a bunch of shit in a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet. They'll do it because they love the game so much. But when it's like a game that people aren't really super stoked about, but the mega game could be cool. Okay, I'll give it a try. But I'm not going to do that much work. And that's where it's it's really important to have something that's really, robust. I mean, it's true, Jackal. I mean, that is a given that there's probably about 50 Wilderfeast players on the entire planet. So, yeah, exactly. Twilight Star's regional hope mechanic that's tied to character progression. That's very cool. Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to do things for sure. I'm obsessed with the mega game concept. I will admit, I am too. I think it's a really cool way to explore character, RPGs in a way that we're not used to exploring them. So I'm a big fan. Plus, it's a lot of fun, and we create some really cool stories, and we can do some really cool stuff. And I'm a big fan. Knights of the Mega Game. Well, roll for Mega Game. I mean, I will say this. Knights of Last Call has some very, very, very generous subscribers to our Patreon. You can join our Patreon for $5, and you can get access to all our channels and all this other stuff. We have higher tiers. Proportionally, the people who sign up for our highest tiers, our $50, $100 tiers, are almost always the people who are the most engaged with the mega games. And they oftentimes do it because it's a way for them to say, I want to support this. I'm a big fan of this. I want to, help make this happen. I'm getting so much value out of playing in these mega games. And when you can compare that to, people who pay on, play online, and they might pay 20, 30, 20 or 30 or $40 a month, a session to play in one of those games, they might be paying, $150 a month just to play in one game. And so here are people who are playing in this interesting, organic, living game, and they're more than willing to pay the $50 tier or whatever, the $100 tier even sometimes, and they don't have to, they choose to. So I think that's really what's really cool about it. Right, and I think that's what's cool about it too, Cinnaboss, that you can be a small part of a big campaign. That's exactly right. As PCs, we're used to being the protagonists, right? The world quite literally revolves around us. And to be quite honest with you, Cinnaboss, sometimes we do run into a little bit of problems with that. We run into problems with that with players. We sometimes run into problems with that with GMs when they realize that the game isn't just about them. It's not just about their character and their character's journey, and the game is bigger than you. I find that to be very, very awesome. And I love that the world can feel that I can be told stories about the game I'm playing in, and I wasn't there for it, but I get to hear the story about it anyways. I think that's really, really cool. TS Agent says, I hear the people at the $50 tier are also far more sexier. TS Agent, I'm inclined to agree. I will most certainly rate anyone who is Exalted or Legend far sexier than those who are not. And then there's the highest tier of all, the Sugar Daddy tier. That's right. Speaking of Sugar Daddy tier, Roll for Combat, I'm starting to put my taxes together, and I realized I never sent you any expenses for all those flights and conventions and stuff, and like buying the U-Haul that took us from Oregon. So I do have some receipts I need to send your way. Sorry. Hero was the original OG. Sucks to be you. I feel uncomfortable being sexualized this way. Yeah, so that's right, King Hodop. You can now join the dumpster fire because you are no longer a minor. That's right. We should have a new restriction that. Well, you're a married man. We'll give you a pass. So that's that. And then lastly, we haven't really had a chance to talk. I will say I have officially secured a private room at Origins 2026 for the Knights of Last Call's exclusive use. So we are going to have our own Fortress of Solitude in the midst of a con. It's going to be a con within a con, and it's going to be really awesome. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be really expensive, but I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can, maybe we had 20 people last year, and I think 25, 30 people this year. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. And I want to do some cool swag and, get some cool, some cool treat. I mean, people are there for the gaming, obviously, but make it cool, make it neat, and maybe do some really cool games that are unique to a convention. That'll be kind of like these one-time off things that Bob and I and maybe some other members of the Patreon can help run. And of course, obviously, last year we didn't even have that, and it was just nights running games for nights. There were a lot of people. We had people last year who didn't even go to the con. They just sat there and ran games and played games with their fellow Knights of the Last Call. And, a lot of these people knew each other from they'd even played games with each other online. But to sit down in person and play with people, it's a very different experience. But it also meant people felt a lot safer, more welcome. You belong to an in crowd, right? You're not a stranger among strangers. You're amongst friends. There are people who you've talked with, that you've had conversations with, that you maybe even have gamed with. And so that's a really cool bonus. And I get it. Not everybody can be there. We're going to try to do a bunch of live streams. I'm even trying to figure out if there's a way I can do have a live stream, like a live feed, like a 24/7 live feed of the game of the Fortress of Solitude, of the Tavern of Last Call, so people can kind of maybe join out and hang out and stuff like that. I don't know. We'll figure out something. But I'm really excited about it, and I think it'll be really neat. And again, I'm not making money on this. I'm trying not to lose too much money on it. So I'm basically the opposite of everybody else that runs one of these things. That they're doing it to, do it for a financial thing. But yeah. Am I going to do a panel? Well, not officially, because if I do something officially, then I have to sell tickets to it, and that means people can show up to it. But also, too, the room is going to be set up primarily for gaming. So, I don't necessarily know that I want. We'll see how it gets structured. I don't know who's going yet. I don't have hard numbers or anything like that. But I know Aaron from Mad Dragon, who made the Daggerheart dice for us, is going to be at Origins. I was joking about being a sponsor. He's like, "Are you accepting sponsorships yet?" And I said, no. You know what? I don't. That is an acceptable reason to pass. But the good news is it's a very low floor. Or sorry, it's a very high floor because it's at a convention, right? So even if we fuck it up somehow and it's terrible, right? Like everybody can still just go to Origins and do all the stuff that you were going to do at Origins anyways. You were going to this convention anyways, right? To play games, to buy games, to demo games, to see people, to hang out with people, right? So that's one of the reasons why this is so good. This is a very, very, very easy thing for me to pull off, because I don't have to feel like I am the sole responsibility for your entire gaming weekend. No, I can provide you with a cool area. We can run some cool events. And if you're not interested in that, and maybe I'm hoping that if we get enough people going, I can have the cost be fairly moderate. And so even if you're like, I didn't really use it that much, you're like, yeah, whatever. It was half the cost of a book or something like that. Then you're not going to be too upset about it. But if I dragged you out and you flew out to NightCon and it was just me and I dropped the ball and it sucked and not enough people came and there was all sorts of problems, then I would feel terrible. So this is a perfect solution for me to have. We're calling it NightCon Session 0 because it's not really its own convention. It's kind of just a demo. The contract is still being ironed out, so I don't know that I can sublet yet, but yeah, I doubt it. So we have to figure out the specifics of that. All right. Well, there we go. We talked about mega games, but we also talked about some of the crazy ideas that I came up with while I was sailing the seas and talking RPGs with my crew, my crew, the crew of the Knights of Last Call. Always appreciated. So that's going to do it for me. I'm not sure when I'm going to be on next, but again, we've got some upcoming first looks. We've got second looks from some of our Golden Knight winners. I want to go back and take a look at some of those games that we won awards, but we maybe only looked at once. Maybe they deserve a second look. Maybe there's been some people on the Discord who have had experience, reps playing that game. I'd love to get them on as guests to sort of share with some real, in the field experience. We've got a couple Draw Steel classes left to finish up in our procedure of going over them, which people have been generous for. That's done really well. Obviously, everybody wants to see more Shadow Deep, more Daggerheart stuff, and I'd love to get to that stuff as well. I've got a Fabulous Ultimate game tomorrow. Everybody's in but Bob, who went on an impromptu vacation, last minute, drop of the hat, spur of the moment trip to Florida. So that'll be fun. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep on keeping on. Let me know in comments what it's 2026. What would you like to see? What would you like more of? The patrons, of course, obviously, get to tell me face up and in person. And if you'd like to be part of that community as well, I encourage you to check us out. Patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Hope to see you there. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.